It is your Kentucky Oaks preview show. We are putting this together September the 1st into September the 2nd, Tuesday into Wednesday. You'll probably get this in your feeds early Wednesday, and we're going to deep dive that Friday card at Churchill Downs. Yes, it is weird. Kentucky Oaks and Kentucky Derby in September. The first Friday and the first Saturday in September. But we're going to treat it just like it was the Oaks, just like it was the Derby. We're going to give you two separate podcasts this week with the focuses, the racing cards from Churchill Downs. We're going to go through every single race on Friday and then every single race on Saturday. And it's going to be really cool the way I've tried to break it up. So for Friday, I'm going to tackle the early part of the Friday card myself, and then Andrew Champagne and Darren Zoccali, who normally join me for the old wrestling recap. Well, we put that on hold this week, and since they're both big horse racing guys, we just broke down the late pick 5 for Friday. We spent an hour and a half, the three of us, race by race, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up until the Oaks. Opinions on, how to build your tickets, who we like, horses to play, horses not to play. I think it ends up like an hour and 40 minutes. They give a thought or two on the Derby as well, but we really get into that late pick 5 with those nice stakes races at Churchill. And then, earlier on, before we even get to that, we'll talk about the Major League Baseball trade deadline. There was a lot of late action. The Padres went all in. Recap the last 2 episodes of Hard Knocks, episode 3 and 4. We'll get through both of those, as football season is just a week, less than a week and a half away. First game next Thursday. Wow. Tons to discuss here with the focus horse racing over at Churchill Downs and the Kentucky Oaks. Before we get into the trade deadline, which I want to talk a little bit about first, and then we'll get into breaking down the Churchill Friday stuff. This week, Stable Duel, the contest schedule. So Wednesday, they have a $10 contest at Parks. $10 buy-in. They have a $250 guaranteed pool there. Make sure to get involved. And then you can play at Emerald, $5 buy-in. Thursday, Charlestown has a $10 buy-in. And then the Emerald Downs late night special, $5 buy-in. Then on Friday, a couple different places have contests. And Friday starts what is a 3-day series. It is called the Del Mar Derby. $1,500 bonus to the top 3 point holders over those 3 days. So make sure to get involved each day. Each of those contests on Friday, Saturday, Sunday are $25 buy-ins with the $1,000 guaranteed pools. And then you also will get a part of that bonus. So Friday you could play in that Del Mar contest. You could also play in just a regular $10 buy-in at Del Mar or at Gulfstream for $5. Saturday they have Charlestown for $5. That second of the Del Mar $25 buy-in. So that's the second part of that three-day series for the Del Mar Derby. Then you can also play in just a regular Del Mar $10 buy-in. And then Sunday is the final. Day 3 of that Del Mar Derby series, $25 buy-in. It's been a really good week for Stable Duel 2. Stable Duel 2, they announced a couple different things. One of them was an initiative for Aftercare Month at Stable Duel, teaming up with a couple different places to raise money for aftercare and gift OTTB Thoroughbred owners some prizes along the way. So really cool stuff. You can read up more about that at Stable Duel. And if you follow them on social media, you'll notice they're doing a great job of answering a lot of questions that people have through videos. So there's one on the feed right now that talks about how you can follow horses in the app and get alerted when they're entered. There's another that talks about the rewards program and what the annual leaderboard is. One that just explains kind of how you build your lineup and go through the process. So make sure to follow Stable Duel on your social media, and you'll get a look at all the great news every time they have a new contest, anything coming up at Stable Duel. Trade deadline in baseball. I mean, honestly, just a crazy different year in baseball because it's a 60-game season. We're more than halfway through the season now. And let's just list the moves. Starting with about a week ago, August 21st, Phillies acquire reliever Brandon Workman, Heath Hembree from the Red Sox for pitchers Nick Pivetta, Connor Siebold. We saw the Red Sox look up and notice where they were and said, hey, you know what? Let's just get rid of anyone that has got any semblance of trade value. Let's trade them and get something back for them because we're not going anywhere this year. So I thought the Red Sox did a pretty good job at the trade deadline. August 24th, Blue Jays acquire Daniel Vogelbach from the Mariners. Blue Jays acquired Tawan Walker from the Mariners. And the Rays acquire Brett Phillips from the Royals for shortstop Lucius Fox. White Sox acquire Jared Dyson from the Pirates. And then we get the Padres. They start to get into it. Trevor Rosenthal from the Royals for outfielder Edward Olivares and a player to be named later. The A's get a couple sneaky pieces. Tommy LaStella, one of them, from the Angels for infielder Franklin Barreto. The Braves get Tommy Totter Milone from the Orioles for two players to be named later. Padres acquire Mitch Moreland from the Red Sox for infielder Hudson Potts and outfielder Jessen Rosario. So that's a need that fills the DH. Someone who's very good against right-handed pitching, Mitch Moreland. Cubs get a bat to help them with Jose Martinez. Rockies acquire Michael Givens for first baseman Tyler Nevin and shortstop Taron Vavra and a player to be named later. Padres get some catching help with a couple different catchers. The first one, Jason Castro from the Angels for Reyes. Then they also get catcher with the Padres. Also get catcher Austin Nola and relievers Austin Adams and Dan Altavilla from the Mariners. So they are just making moves. The Blue Jays, they take a swing on Robbie Ray for the D-backs. So they need to get a little pitching because the Blue Jays are currently in the playoffs right now if the season ends. The Athletics make a type of move that they normally make, right? They get someone who's been struggling a little bit and hope they can bring them in and they can get some value out of them, and that's starter Mike Minor from the Rangers. If he can turn back the clock to give them some of the innings that he gave last year to the Rangers, that's a big acquisition for the A's. And then the big one, the Padres get starter Mike Clevenger. He will become their number one starter and give them a very good 1-2-3 punch. They get him from the Indians. Outfielder Greg Allen, a player to be named later for Cal Quantrill, Joey Cantillo, Austin Hedges, Gabriel Arias, Owen Miller, and Josh Naylor in a pretty big blockbuster. And some of the other moves, Blue Jays get Jonathan Villar from the Marlins, so another addition for the Blue Jays. How about the Marlins going all in? They make a move to go get Starling Marte for Caleb Smith, Humberto Mejia, and a player to be named later, who ended up being Julio Frias. Cubs acquire left-handed reliever Andrew Chafin from the Diamondbacks for a player to be named later, and they also got left-handed reliever Josh Osich from the Red Sox, so a couple of pieces to help the bullpen for the Cubs, something they desperately needed. Sneaky, solid moves for the Cubs to fill a void. Phillies get David Phelps from the Brewers for three players to be named later. Rockies get Kevin Pillar in cash from the Red Sox for a player to be named later in international slot money. So Pillar makes a move, and we see the Red Sox just shipping off anyone who has some sort of value, which is smart. Giants get left-hander Anthony Bonda from the Rays. Padres acquire right-hander Taylor Williams from the Mariners, so a little bullpen help there for the Padres. Mets acquire catcher Robinson Chirinos and cash from the Rangers. Mets also acquire Todd Frazier from the Rangers. Mets also acquire reliever Miguel Castro from the Orioles for left-hander Kevin Smith and a player to be named later or cash. And the Reds acquire Archie Bradley Jr. and cash from the D-backs for utility man Josh Van Meter and outfielder Stuart Fairchild. Cubs get Cameron Maybin from the Tigers. Reds get Brian Goodwin from the Angels, who's sneaky. He can give them some big at-bats. So we had, and Padres got Taylor Williams from the Mariners, and the Blue Jays get Ross Stripling from the Dodgers, which was a bummer. Ross was someone who has been a Dodger for a while, and he's given the Dodgers some big innings. He's been in the pen. He's been a starter for a while. He's just done whatever they've asked of him. They traded him to the Angels. That trade didn't go through earlier in the year, so he came back, and he struggled a little bit this year. They have a lot more options, and in particular, they have a really strong bullpen. So moving him to the bullpen in most years would have been a very good option. But this year, when you look at the arms the Dodgers have down there, and then you have someone like Tony Gonsolin, who's been coming back and forth from the minors or from your taxi squad and up and down, you're probably better off Alex Wood just coming back. He made his first start back from injury and coming out of the bullpen, just pitching an inning. So unfortunately, for someone like Ross, it just didn't seem like there was a lot of room for him on the Dodgers with his struggles this year. So he goes to Toronto, and he can give them some good innings. It's like anything. Sometimes a change in scenery wakes you up a little bit. There's a new pitching coach, somebody's a new scout helping you out. Just different philosophy, different thoughts, different anything to shake things up a little bit. So he'll be hanging out with the other former Dodger, Ryu, there with the Blue Jays. Yeah, so it's obviously the Padres, the big team that everybody's going to be looking at from what they did. A couple catchers, Castro and Austin Nola. They get Mitch Moreland. They get Austin Adams, Dan Altavilla, Trevor Rosenthal, and Taylor Williams to all help in the bullpen, and a top-of-the-line starting pitcher with Clevenger. So now you got Clevenger, Lamet, and Paddock. If that's your 1-2-3 in a 3-game series, or if you start those 3 arms multiple times in a long series, and with the offense that they have right now, the number 1 offense in baseball, this team is legitimate. Now, they're still chasing the Dodgers, and on paper, there's probably still a gap, but that gap got closed very, very quickly. Because pitching is the equalizer. If you have legitimate top-of-the-line starting pitching, we saw last year what happened with the Nationals, you just keep rotating those awesome starters and get as many innings out of you as you can, because what we see is teams that have good bullpens, sure, that's a great thing. But what ends up happening is when you have to use 4, 5, 6 different arms in one game, what happens? There's much more likelihood that one of those pitchers doesn't have their right stuff, throws a bad pitch, is a little bit off. If there's one pitcher you have deal in, you just let them deal. I don't think we see enough of that nowadays. And the Padres, they got a strong roster right now. And nobody, you look around, who else? The Blue Jays. I think the teams that felt like they said, hey, you know what? This is a short year. We're in a spot where we're either in the playoffs or sitting just on the outside. We're not giving up. We're going to make a move or two. And we saw the Padres did a lot more than that. The Reds, Blue Jays, Marlins, A's all showed with how they handled themselves at the trade deadline. They're going for it. They're trying to make runs this year. So, get ready for another fun second half of the baseball season. The trade deadline is over. These teams are now going to be standing pat. Who is improved the most? Can the Padres take that big step? We're only a week away from the NFL. There are tons of fantasy contests available over at Thrive Fantasy. Do you like to play fantasy football year-long? I play fantasy football, baseball, basketball. Also, I play in fantasy horse races stuff. I'm in all sorts of different fantasy stuff. Thrive Fantasy is a DFS app for prop bets, and it gives you options for basically every sport that's been out there. Right now, recently, before a lot of the big sports came back, they had League of Legends stuff. They had golf going on. They would have soccer. Now you throw baseball into the mix, you throw basketball into the mix, and you bring in football coming back next week. What you do is you select your lineup around a list of prop bets. If you're someone who wagers on a lot of props, you will really like the format of Thrive Fantasy. And I'm offering you a little bit of a bonus for the listeners of our show. If you go right now, sign up, download the Thrive Fantasy app, use the promo code GINO, deposit $20, you get an instant $20 bonus right back. There's a lot of contests that you can play in for $20, $25, the big ones that have thousands of dollars in prizes. You can play in contests all the way down to $2, $5, head-to-heads, group contest. You can play in bigger ones for $500 and $1,000, and they have free rolls all the time where if you're just watching contests pop up, they're free, and they do give you back cash prizes. Totally legit site. I've played in a ton of contests over there. I've won some money. I've made my withdrawals. I've deposited. Everything's worked out great. Thrive Fantasy promo code GINO. Deposit 20. Get that $20 bonus. Churchill Downs Friday. Let's talk about the the Friday Churchill card. I'm going to go through the early part of the card, and then we're going to bring in Andrew Champagne and Darin Zoccali, and we're going to really get into the late pick 5. Look at your past performances out. We're talking about Friday, Churchill Downs, September the 4th, and we kick things off with a maiden special weight race, fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. You have an entry in here with the 1, Sovereign Appeal and Movie Moxie. To me, especially if you get that 2 for 1, I think the entry, to me, Movie Moxie's the one to beat, and I really like Sovereign Appeal as well as a logical contender. If you're getting the 2 for 1, I think that's where you start in here. So Movie Moxie, she'll be making her 3rd start. She was 3rd in her debut, then she came back, she was just beaten in neck. She just missed last out on an off track. She's the one to beat. Sovereign Appeal, the thing about Movie Moxie, she's burned some money. She's been your beaten favorite twice. And she's going to take a lot of money again in here, especially with the stablemate Sovereign Appeal, who looks live. She debuted at Gulfstream, didn't show much, but then she came back in her 2nd start at Churchill at June, and she was behind a horse who's a nice one, who's come back to win, and we're going to see later on the card. That was a very productive race that she comes out of on June the 27th. She was a step slow from the rail. She got shuffled a bit from the inside. She was outrun as they flew early. She was back to last on the inside. She kept inside, and she closed very nicely up the rail. She was a clear-cut second that day, Sovereign Appeal. So for me, I start with the entry of Sovereign Appeal, Movie Moxie. They're the one to beat. Of course, Financial One is going to take a lot of money. This horse is got a very nice pedigree. The dam was just 1 for 6, but she has produced 5 foals to race. They are all winners. They've combined to go 16 for 64 for almost $3.3 million in earnings. The top earner of them, Close Hatches, who is the half sib to Financial One. Close Hatches was a 9 for 14, $2.7 million in earnings. I'm just not a fan of the 7 furlongs in the debut. I don't love it. It's not an easy distance to debut at. Horses win it all the time, sure. But when I look at a race and I see other horses that have a little more foundation, I prefer others if it's close. So that's why I lean towards the 1 of the horses I think are going to be the short price in here. The 1A, Movie Moxie, and the 1 Sovereign Appeal. You'll get the 2 for 1 there. I do look to the outside towards a couple other horses that I think are very live. Let's talk about the 9, Whispering Pines. So she's a first-time starter. Her dam was 5 for 7, earned $297,000, was a multiple stakes winner, was grade 2 placed. This filly is drawn well. She has 2 siblings. They're both winners. This jockey-trainer combination, they won their last 2 races together. A horse named Inject was one of them, who is a nice first-time starter. And in the last year, this jockey-trainer combo is 5 for 14 together with a 2nd and 3/3. They are just live. They come out running. The 2, Glamour Girl, who draws the rail, she turns back. She will come running. She needs a little pace help. But look at some of the races that she comes out of behind Fire Corral and Paris Lights, who came back to win a grade 1 out of there. So 1, 9, 5, 2, some of the horses I'm looking to. You want to look towards others. Norma Jean B. In her last start, she showed some improvement. She was a step slow, but she recovered very well. She settled in between horses on the inside, but then she had nowhere to go. It was sneaky trouble. She got pushed back, nowhere to go. She ended up finishing 3rd that day. If you like Movie Moxie, Norma Jean B was a few lengths behind her, but did have a reason to be. She has every reason to improve along with her. Throw her in at least on one of your tickets or underneath. And then Chewy Good, who's now going to cut back. She was a pace factor from the inside. She was in the 2 path. She was pressing, then up to take the lead. She did try to battle. It wasn't a bad effort in her debut, going a mile. Slight turn back now to 7 furlongs. Horses to me, I've kind of stacked this race in order 1, 9, 5, 2, 7, 8. I'm going to play something right away where I single the 1, another one where I use 1, 5, 9, and then maybe another one where I use all of those contenders that I mentioned. Because you can kick off right off the bat in race number 1 at Churchill, you can kick off an early pick 5 on Friday. Let's get you to race number 2. And I'm going to start with the 6th. And here's my top selection. That is Salty as Can Be. So we have a bunch of first-time starters in here, a couple horses with some experience. The 6 is a first-time starter for Mark Cassie, Gary Barber, Bakari Racing, 2-year-old daughter of Into Mischief. They paid $850,000 for this one. And her dam was 2 for 10. She was stakes placed. She has produced 4 siblings that have raced. 2 of them are multiple winners. One of them was named Salty, who was 4 for 11, earned $688,000, was a multiple graded stakes winner, and was a grade 1 winner over the Churchill Downs racetrack. Salty as Can Be will be on all of my tickets. Quick Money showed speed in her debut. That's the 7. She was very fast from the outside. She opened up a couple lengths. She was no match for the real talented winner, Inject, but she held second nicely. I think Quick Money is a must-use with that speed. The 9, Amusing Antics. Another one to look to. The dam was unraced. This is the first foal, but she's a little bit sneaky when you look at her work tab. The barn isn't known for winning a bunch first time out, but they win with the good ones that are ready. This filly looks a little ready. Throw the 9, Amusing Antics, in some of your exotics. The number 4, we have to look to Lady Traveler, first time starter, 2-year-old daughter of Quality Road. I mean, this is just a brutally difficult race. And her dam was just 1 for 10, but she's produced 7 foals to race, 6 of them winners. One of them was Heart to Heart, who's earned $2 million, who won at the age of 2, was a 15-time winner. The Romans barn is capable. They're 20 for their last 200 of the first-time starters, 5 for the last 22. Same type of thing. A lot of these barns that don't crank their horses all the time to win first out, they still will win first out. Plenty with good horses. And that's how this barn is. Lady Traveler might be one of them. What's wrong with the 3? Sayonara. Dam won her first 2 starts, including a grade 3. Both of those wins were over this racetrack. She's produced 2 foals, one of them won. Asmussen, always a super capable first-time out barn. You look at the horses to the outside. The 11 and the 12. Fair-sighted. Dam won twice, but did earn $230,000, was graded stakes placed and multiple stakes placed. The lone sibling for this one is 0 for 5. For the outside, Super Sport. Another one whose dam won a couple times, earned over $100,000. She has some very quick workouts on the page. Looks like she has a little bit of ability in the mornings that she's been showing. Malibu Bird. In her debut, she had a fine start. She was up to press. She was second. She was just off. She moved to the lead. She, immediately was tackled with a 3-wide move, but she was a clear-cut second that day. No real knocks on her. No reason why she can't improve. She was your beaten favorite. Nah, I've mentioned 6, 7, 9, 4, 3, 11, 12, 2. That gives you an idea of what kind of a race it is. So how you play your early pick 5 or some of your early exotic wagers, because this is the start of the early pick 4 you could play. A lot of people will probably spread out in here, and that's generally not, when everyone else spreads out, you don't want to spread 2. I'm going to play one ticket where I probably just go all if I've singled in the first race and a pick 5 on that one. And then on my next ticket, I feel like I could probably shorten up a little bit to, 6, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9. That's not shortening up. 6, 7, 9. Maybe a few dollars to win on the 6 as long as she's, over 6 to 1. Let's move to race number 3 here. Optional 62, non-2s, a mile and a 16th. For me, the early exotics, and again, why I'm going to be able to spread out a little bit more in race number 2 also, are going to come down a lot to this third race, because it's just going to be the 4 for me. Positive Spirit. I just don't love anybody else in here. High Regardo for the last 11, Cerecillo for the last 9, Jewel Princess, I'm not sure quite how good she is, but she might just be an okay, heading in the right direction right now. We'll see if she even ends up in this race. Beautiful Trauma has that big figure when she won by 16, but you win by 16 in the slop, and then we don't see you since, and that was back in December. I have some concerns about her showing up now, trying to go a mile in a 16th. Resurrection Road, maybe. I mean, I don't love anybody in here. To me, it really looks like this race is a good spot for Positive Spirit. She hadn't raced from May of 2019 to July of 2020. She came back in a stakes race that was actually a pretty tough race behind a nice horse named Indian Pride, and Blamed was in there also. She was behind horses, and she really had nowhere to go. Once she got room, she was flat, and she started to back up. She's going to go second off, and she's going to stretch back out. She wants to go longer. 7 furlongs isn't her trip anyways. That was a total prep, get a race under her belt, and now she stretches out. This is a great spot for her. She, to me, looks like a very logical, short price, chalky single. I don't love anybody else. I tried to find others to use. I'm just singling the 4 in here, Positive Spirit, and I'm moving on to race number 4, where I'll begin with the 3 Miss T2. This is another horse who, I'm okay with singling. In depending on how you look at, how your tickets are built, she might be favored. It just depends. It wouldn't be a shock. Ocean Breeze is going to take plenty of money, so you're not going to be singling in this spot. If you do, an overwhelming favorite, even if she does end up taking money, there's going to be money spread out in here, at least with those two. And I do think those two are in the top tier, and I will use the 5 along with 3, 5, 6 for me on a lot of tickets. Let's go to the 3, Miss T2. She's shown sprint speed, and look at some of the races she's come out of. She's behind 4 Graces, Sconson, who we'll see later. She dares the Devil in Bayerness. So she's faced good, nice animals. Now she's going to turn back. So this is going to be a situation where she can go just as fast as she wants. She doesn't have to worry about rationing out the speed, rating her speed at all. It's just back to 6 furlongs. Let's gun it. And even if she has to be a little off the pace in here, she'll still have so much fitness cutting back. I don't think she'll have a problem passing horses if she has to be just off. The 5 is one of the price horses in here that I look to because she's not as bad as her last start was. And if you just put a line through that last start, she started to move into it. She was behind horses up the rail, and then she just really had nothing left. She got a little flat. It was a strong race she came out of. Those top 2 have both come back to win. The winner Monday Call, we'll see later on. Very, very talented. Sometimes we have to be forgiving, right? Tipsy Gal drew the rail in a sprint with a horse who wants to come from out of it. She has some legitimate excuses. Just put a line through that July 11th race, then look at her form, and she looks like she would be right there with the rest of the contenders. Her figures are just a cut below. That's fine. The 6 Ocean Breeze is the other real super logical horse to beat in here. Comes up a runner-up effort behind Monday Call. Behind that, prior to that was behind Next Out winning Flat Out Speed. And she's going to cut back to 6 furlongs. She should have more punch. She's, probably the one to beat. I prefer Miss T2 a little bit more because I think Miss T2 should be able to get a kind of a jump on her. And then after those, the next tier for me would be the 1 and the 8. It would be She Can't Sing, who is exiting a race where that July 11th race that we've talked about, the first, second, and fourth place finishers have all come back to win. And she will come running, but 6 furlongs from the rail, is she going to get shuffled and come back and then have to make a big long move? And will she have enough time to get up going 6 furlongs? That's why I throw her in maybe a ticket or 2, but she feels more like an underneath. And the 8, Palomita, who's drawn outside of the other speeds, which is a big deal for her in this spot, with the opportunity to maybe sit off and track if have to, drawn towards the outside of the other speeds. So it's 3, 5, 6 as my top tier, 3 as the for sure horse to play for me, and then 1 and 8 as others to include if you're going to go a little bit deeper. Let's get to race number 5, where I will start with the 7. And that is Mej Tom. So, her debut I really liked. She moved through horses on the inside, but she moved into a tight spot. She got shuffled. She lost a few lengths. She angled around. She tried to get into it. It's better than it looks on paper. It really is. And she didn't get a big bust-out figure for the race at Ellis, so people might dismiss it. They see some other first-time starters that they'll probably try to gravitate to. Throw the 7 in on your pick 5s or however you're playing in some of these exotics in race number 5. The 8, Travel Column. This dam was a 6-time winner. Swing It, earned $345,000, was a multiple stakes winners. She's produced 5 siblings, or she produced 5 foals that are siblings to Travel Column. 4 of them winners. One of them was Neolithic, multiple grade 1 placed, who earned $2.2 million. Hitting the board in a couple really big races. The 12 is Peace Broker. And the dam was 0 for 7, but this one's a half to Dawn of Veloce, who we're going to see in the Kentucky Oaks. 2 for 4, 490,000 graded stakes winner. Peace Broker. Nice little pedigree to the outside for Brett Calhoun. The 3 is Amici, whose dam was a 4-time winner, earned $389,000, was grade 1 placed, was multiple stakes placed, and won at Churchill. Super capable barn first time out. And this dam has produced 12 foals. They've combined for $1.36 million and 24 victories. The 4, Miss Malibu. Oh, I loved Malibu Pier. Her dam. Oh, she was one of my personal favorites. She was 6 for 14. She earned $466,000. She was a multiple graded stakes winner, and she was grade 1 placed on the dirt. She has produced 4 foals to race, 3 of them winners. 1 of them won at 2, and 2 of them have earned over $350,000. That's the 4, Miss Malibu. The 10 and 11, a couple horses at the outside to mention. The 10, Off We Go, whose dam was 4 for 8, and you know Amos can get horses ready to rock first time out. And then Honorifique, who was a runner-up at Ellis, came out of that with a very nice work over at Keeneland. And in the race at Ellis, it was a fine start from the outside. It was just a couple lengths off, but was 5th, and then made a big 3-wide bid at the top of the lane. It was a strong second that day. Now cuts back in distance from 7 to 6 with a nice work. Another one of these deep maiden special weight races where you're looking at, I'm 7, 8, 12, 3, 4, 10, 11 that we just talked about. But what's nice is the way that this early pick 5 sequence is, for me at least, there are multiple horses who I can look at singling. I can think about singling in race number 1 right off the bat with the entry, especially if you get 2 for 1 there. In race number 3, I'm fine with singling the number 4. In fact, on all of my tickets, I'm going to be singling Positive Spirit. In race number 4, on another ticket or 2, I could single the 4 Miss T2. So when you have a couple different options in a sequence that you can single, it's fine to go very deep and use an all or 2 if you have to. Let's get to race number 6 at Churchill Downs. And this is one of those in-between races where it's not in a whole lot of the multi-race exotics, which I like to play. And honestly, the only horse that I look at is the 5, Honest Mischief, so I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time on the 6th race. I do think the 5, who missed the break, settled 4th, was a couple lengths off. And honestly, that was the difference between winning and losing that day. He ends up finishing 2nd. Admiral Lynch, who won, just got at the jump on him. And Honest Mischief moved up into contention, got to about within a length before flattening out, because Admiral Lynch just had the much easier trip. So if you're going to play anything in the 6, maybe throw the 5 in there, but I can't imagine this is really a race that I end up playing a whole lot because he's probably going to get bad. I don't like a whole lot. There's not a bunch of cool under prices I want to toss in. It's just probably a race I end up skipping. We move to race number 7, and this is a race that begins your pick 6. I probably don't play the pick 6 here, but I do likely make a win wager on the number 4. More Good Times. So this is a 3-year-old filly who, she's never really run a bad race. When you look at her form overall, she was beaten a couple lengths in her first 2 starts in big fields at Gulfstream. Came back at Tampa, was actually favored in early March, and she was 4th in a field of 11. Then she comes into the Maker Barn. She runs on July the 10th. It's her first start since March. And she hadn't raced in, 4 months. She's going a mile in 3/16. She ends up getting hooked 3 deep in a small field. She's third. She's 3 off, and she ends up tiring at the top of the lane. She comes back at Ellis on August the 9th. They turn her back a little bit from a mile in 3/16 to a mile in 16th. And she draws the outside. She immediately takes back, gets over to save ground. She's 10th, but she's only 6 or 7 lengths off the pace. She moves up onto the heels of a rival. There's nowhere to go. She takes back. She tries to go again a few different times, and then goes in between, and a 6-7 wide move, loses a ton of ground, but she just storms home. There is ability here with More Good Times, and she is in good hands right now with Mike Maker, who gets these horses to go very, very good going long on the grass. I like the 4 More Good Times. Anything over 5-1, we're going to make a win wager on the number 4 More Good Times. Let's talk about one of the sponsors of That's What G Said, OldSmokeClothing.com. I know you like horse racing. You're listening to the horse racing analysis for Friday for Churchill Downs. Now, there aren't a ton of places out there where we can see horse racing t-shirts, swag, polo shirts, hoodies, long sleeves, zip-ups, hats with the names of horses, of big races, of slogans, where you can have custom designs. Where else do you get to get a bunch of gear so you could show the horse racing fan in you? OldSmokeClothing.com. When you use the promo code GINO, promo code GINO, no shipping for you. So don't have to worry about the shipping cost. Go check out the website. If you're a fan of Tiz the Law coming up in the Derby this week, Tiz the Law t-shirts, trucker hats, all sorts of different options, tons of different racetrack names, all sorts of things that you and your horse racing friends will all know. Maybe one of your family members, brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, they love the races. Great idea for a gift for them, for a birthday, for a holiday. OldSmokeClothing.com. Don't forget about that promo code GINO. It'll get you no shipping cost on your order. Now it's time to get to the stakes races for Friday at Churchill Downs, and joining me to dissect them and to really get into races 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. My good friends, Andrew Champagne, Darin Zoccali. Enjoy as we get into all of the races in the Pick 5 sequence, that late Pick 5 at Churchill on Friday, and we go through all of the horses in the Kentucky Oaks. We each spend a few minutes talking about every single one of those fillies running in race number 12. Enjoy. This one really goes through a ton of stuff. We spent a lot of time, and I hope we can lead you to a few winners. Big week in the world of horse racing. Yeah, the first Friday in September is the Kentucky Oaks, and the first Saturday in September is the Kentucky Derby this year. Yeah, I know, weird, but that's pretty much been 2020. We're always going to look back at this one and know things were a little different. And joining me this week to talk about the late Pick 5 on Kentucky Oaks Day, which is a really nice card, as you would imagine, on these Oaks and Derby days. We've got a bunch of stakes races to talk about, a bunch of really, really well-known horses that we've seen, and a couple unbelievable fillies that are going to be locking up in the Kentucky Oaks. It's the boys from the Old Wrestling Rewatch, a couple of my best buds, Darin Zoccali, Andrew Champagne. You hear them each week when we talk wrestling and we go back in time and review the old WWF or WCW pay-per-views. But this week we decided to just put a little pin in the wrestling recap for another week, because since we're all big horse racing fans, let's talk some horse racing. Let's try to make you some money out there, folks. Darin Zoccali, Andrew Champagne, thank you for joining me. DZ, just overall thoughts on the Friday card. I mean, weird year, and maybe the Oaks and the Derby aren't as deep from, top to bottom as a normal year. But I'll tell you, these undercard races and the stakes on both the Friday and Saturday undercards still look as good as any other Oaks or Derby undercard you would think of.
Yeah, I mean, it's two monstrous days. The way I kind of looked at it, so Friday, I think, has a lot of the star power in terms of the undercard. Obviously, with Monomoy Girl, and then you have these two fillies hooking up in the eighth race. Monday Call could be anything. Four Graces is in there. You got Sharing, who could be an absolute monster on the turf as well. So I think in terms of like sheer star power, to me, the undercard on Friday stands out, whereas Saturday looks like it has a bit more in terms of general betting value. So I think that's kind of the contrast between.
It's a good way to put it. I agree.
Yeah, but which is great, because as a racing fan and as a bettor, you get the best of both worlds over 2 days, and you really can't ask for much more than that.
And just beating a few of those big names or short prices on a Friday is where you make the money. You don't have to beat them all. If there are a lot that are going to take money, you beat one or two of them, you get a middle price horse or two, and man, that throws your pick five, up dramatically. So, Andrew, what are some of your overall thoughts of the Friday card and what you've gotten to see of the Saturday card so far? We're recording this early. This is Tuesday night, so we're doing this early on.
Yeah, we're really doing the whole early bird gets the worm sort of thing here. We're trying to take initiative. It's not the new year yet, but we're trying to be proactive and not reactive. Up next is a gym membership for all three of us. We'll see y'all there. Anyway,
I got one already. What are you worried about?
Stop bragging, Darin. The rest of us don't have lives to worry about here. Anyway, so what happened here is Darin actually took most of my main points. Friday's card has a lot of star power on it, given some of the races that are involved. I love the 8 Bells. There are some really fun horses in that race. Sharing comes back in the Grade 2 Edgewood. Got to say, though, there's a little resentment between myself and Sharing, because Sharing's Dam was the source of one of the worst beats of my handicapping career in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf many, many, many years ago. We'll get into that in a bit. But, of course, the headliner is the Kentucky Oaks. We've got Gamine. We've got Swiss Skydiver. We've got Speech. We've got Dona Veloce coming in off of a 6-month layoff. And there's one other horse in there that's going to be a gigantic price that I think you need to consider. That's called foreshadowing, kids. And I'm really excited about this pick 5 sequence. I think you can play a good ticket for not a whole heck of a lot of money. And if you get one or two prices home, this is going to pay really, really well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, too. It doesn't feel like some pick 5s, when you start looking through them, or just any sequences, pick 4 or whatever you're looking through, you look and you're like, oh, you get a little bit sometimes like, it's demoralizing when you're like, where am I going to spread out? Where am I going to shorten up? This is deep. This feels like races where you can take a stand. You can feel confident shortening up in some of the races. Now, does that mean you're going to be right? No, but as a player, it's nice to go into a sequence just feeling a little bit better about it. So let's jump right into race number 8. Get your past performances out. We're talking about September the 4th at Churchill Downs, race 8 on Friday. It is the Grade 2 8 Bells, 7 furlongs the distance. And Darin was mentioning a couple of really nice fillies in this one, and Andrew talked about how this was a fun race to handicap, and I would very much echo those sentiments. It's going to be a big weekend for fantasy horse racing for Team Fight on Gino, and one of my top fillies that I really like and I'm a big fan of is Four Graces, but I know she's going to have her work cut out for her, Darin, because there is a quality animal to the inside in Monday Call, who has won 3 in a row, and her victories, I mean, she's not even really being tested at all, but she draws the rail, which could complicate things a little bit in a race with other speed. So right off the bat, starting with this 8 Bells, who are some of the horses you're looking to, and how do you approach this race?
Yeah, I mean, look, I hate picking chalk, and I wish I could come up with something creative here, but it's really difficult to come look at this race and not expect either Monday Call or Four Graces to come out of this thing victorious. In terms of who I like more, I lean to Four Graces strictly because I'm a sheet player, and Four Graces paired up her top last time out, whereas Monday Call kind of just came up with a monster number at a 7 3/4 and might have a chance to regress here a little bit off of that. So I lean towards Four Graces. I like the outside post better. She's versatile. She could stalk or go to the front. But, yeah, I mean, I just don't think the other fillies are fast enough in here. I'm not going to get cute. I'm going to use the two of them moving forward in the pick 5.
Mark it down, ladies and gentlemen. Tuesday, September 1st, Andrew Champagne, more creative in a multi-race wager than Darin Zoccali. Because this is usually not the case. Usually it's Darin yelling at me for picking too much chalk on Twitter, and it usually never ends well. However, there actually is a mid-price horse in here that I like. And I understand why Darin doesn't necessarily like this horse, because this is a horse that has been chasing Monday Call and Four Graces in 3 of the last 4 starts. Having said that, Monday Call is going to want to go. Never Forget's not going to be too far off of it. Perfectly Claire is going to go early. Perfect Happiness is going to go early. Four Graces is going to go early. If they go 22 to the quarter, 44 and change to the half, I think to a certain extent you can throw the numbers out the window, because it's going to be a stagger fest turning for home. If that happens, I want a closer on my ticket, and that's number 5, Sconsin, a horse trained by Greg Foley, who has been training at Churchill Downs since running 3rd in the Audubon Oaks behind Monday Call last time out. Look, I don't necessarily think Sconsin is as good as Monday Call or Four Graces, but if Sconsin gets the setup that I think Sconsin is going to get, she's going to be rolling late. Is she good enough to win? I don't know, but she's 6-1 on the morning line. I think she's going to drift up a little bit off of that, and at that price, I need to have Sconsin on my ticket, because this seems like the 8-1 shot that plays far bigger in a pick 5 than the win odds would indicate. So for me, the top 3 here are 1, 5, and 7. I think Monday Call is coming into her own. I think this is a horse that is getting better and better since moving to the Brad Cox barn. And I like the fact that 2 back, she showed she didn't necessarily need the lead in order to run well. I think that's huge, and I think if Monday Call breaks a little slower, it's not a deal breaker. Four Graces is not a bad horse. The outside draw is certainly a plus, but I just think Monday Call is better than Four Graces in here. So if we were going on an A-B structure, which is the way I'm going to lay this out, for me, horses 1 and 5 would be A's, and I'd use 7 as a B as sort of a saver.
Yeah, I agree. I'll throw Wisconsin in the mix also, and for basically everything that you said. I just feel like Four Graces and Monday Call might be focused on each other a little bit. Like if Julian's looking at Monday Call and maybe he tries to move early, if he's trying to sit from the outside and go after him, then Wisconsin maybe gets the pace to run at. And so I don't want her off the ticket. But again, I can completely understand what Darin's doing. And I might even on one ticket just single a Four Graces, because I play a couple different tickets, and maybe I can get a little bit of separation here where people might have to double up with Monday Call or even go 3 deep. But Wisconsin, Monday Call, Four Graces for me on one ticket. And then as far as just a couple horses to mention under, if you're looking to try to throw one of those short price horses out underneath, and then maybe use a couple horses underneath to spice things up, I would recommend the horses to look at would maybe be Perfectly Claire or Never Forget. Never Forget might just be able to kind of fall into a good spot. I don't even know if she wants to pass horses. I don't really know how good she is, but cutting back from a mile, if she's just there and horses are stopping, she might just be able to keep going that same one pace all the way around. And then Perfectly Claire, she's kind of a wild card. We really don't know how good she is. She beat a horse that came right back to win, but that was over at Indy. This is no doubt a step up, and she's going to be dealing with some quality animals. So if you're trying to play maybe a deck of, a cold deck or a try where you put either a Monday Call or a Four Graces on top of some others, those might be some prices I would try to complete. But man, quality fillies in here. I mean, we're going to see some really, really nice ladies on this Friday card, and they start out here in the 8 bells with those two. So a good way to kick off that pick 5 as we move on to the Edgewood. And this is a mile and a turf course. These are fillies 3-year-olds, DZ. The conversation in this race has to begin with Sharing, Grade 1 winner, Breeders' Cup Turf winner. She has never been worse than 3rd. Her 2 defeats were when she was beaten a neck in her debut, and then when she was second against Group 1 company over at Royal Ascot, and she won at Churchill Downs over this track when she prepped for Ascot. it's another situation where we don't like using favorites. We're always trying to find a reason not to. She doesn't necessarily just tower over the field on pure numbers, but she does look to be a standout, and you have to at least start the conversation with her.
You do have to start the conversation with her. Obviously everything that she's done has been sensational. Her win coming back, her first start of the year, where we've seen some of these 2-year-old fillies, especially on the grass in their first start, not necessarily fire their best shot at first asking, but Graham certainly had her ready to go. She finished second to Alpine Star, who actually took on the boys in her next start over in France and really ran well there. So that race has already come back good. If you're a numbers guy, though, there is some room for doubt because she's not that much faster on paper than the rest of these fillies.
It almost reminds me where we would like when you would see Decorated Invader in some of the turf races, and his figures just don't tower over where you would look at a horse that's going to be a heavy favorite and see some of those same figures like you might see with the Monday Call in the race before, like we saw. So I agree that's where you look into it and say,
yeah. So with a filly like this in this spot, eventually, listen, there's no knock against her, but eventually she's going to run into a filly that's going to step up with a monster race. And maybe this is that spot. Now, the problem that I have is, okay, well, if you take that angle, who do you like? And I'll be honest with you. There's nobody in here that jumps off the page at me as the logical counter option to the favorite. Sharing ran a 9 on the Ragozins 2 starts back. Walkin' Marrakesh ran a 9 on the Ragozins in her last start. Everything else from every other filly, including those two, is pretty much a 12, 13, or 14. I have no strong opinion here. I think Sharon can get upset, so I'm going to do something here that I hardly ever do, and it's because of how my ticket is structured later on. I'm going to buy this race and hit the all button and hope something crazy happens.
I can totally see that happening. I'm going to be doing very similar, and I might even be doing just sort of like you said, the way my ticket will shape up depending. I might be willing to throw Sharing out and go all but Sharing, how I am later, because I don't want to necessarily have a ticket that's just going to be chalk all the way through. But if I'm singling on one ticket, maybe a more pricey horse, then I'm similar. Because Andrew, I'm going through this race and I'm making cases for some speed with In Good Spirits from the inside. I think with the rail, they're going to have to go. I really like what Hendy Woods has done. I think she's a nice up-and-comer. I think she has a legitimate excuse for the 2-back race at Churchill, a race she probably needed and had some trouble that day. Lucky Betty came on the grass for the first time. She won. She had some decent races at Oaklawn prior to that. Walkin' Marrakesh, she might be a horse who doesn't like to win, but she's going to be right there. I mean, she wasn't far back, and she had legitimate trouble against Sharing. So, I don't know, Andrew, do you see this race more as Darin and I as a spread, or do you think this is just all about Sharing and move on?
Well, there's one variable that we need to talk about, and unfortunately, it's the variable that has made the last several Kentucky Derby days living nightmares. That, of course, is the weather. Now, It's supposed to be very nice on Friday, very nice on Saturday. I am moving forward with the assumption that the dirt course will be good or fast. However, it is supposed to pour on Wednesday and Thursday in Louisville. So I am operating under the assumption that there's going to be some cut in the ground on the turf course. It might not be a fully soft course, but we might get yielding. We might be on the softer side of good. My guess is there's going to be some moisture in the track. That's how I've handicapped. If it turns out that the weather gods are smiling upon Kentucky, I'll adjust my handicapping accordingly. But I need to say that because, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of the race that Hendy Woods comes out of. A number of these runners come out of that same race at Indiana Grand. I love Indiana Grand's racing product. It's fantastic, but this just seems like a big class jump for these horses. Sharing's a different kind of animal. She is my top pick. The concern that I would have with Sharing is she comes back not super quick off of the race at Royal Ascot, but little more than 2 months, was on the work tab again less than a month after coming back. Now, this could be interpreted as she came back really, really well. She shipped there. She shipped back. She didn't lose anything. She's back on the work tab. That's great. Also, though, this is a grade 2. This might not necessarily be the end goal for Graham Motion and Company, because remember, the Queen Elizabeth II is coming up at Keeneland in October.
Great point.
That's a grade 1. So I think Schering should win this race. I thought her race at Ascot was very, very good. You run second in a Group 1 at Royal Ascot, chances are you've run very, very well.
And you know what? It was a weird trip too. Like she broke really well, and then she took back, and she didn't look like she was traveling well. It just her class just kind of even got her up to finish second. She's just really hard to knock.
Well, yeah. The only knock seriously that I have on that horse, and I mentioned it right up at the top of the show, is shared account is her dam. And every time I see Schering in the past performances, I cringe because college-aged Andrew had Midday and Kirtana in an exacta box in the 2010 Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. After we're done here, guys, go watch that race on YouTube. Pause it at the top of the stretch. Midday is the favorite. Kirtana is an absurd price. I think about 40-1. Kirtana looks like she's going to win. Midday looks like she's going to win or run second. There's one problem. Shared account forgets to stop. Shared account was 46-1 under the lights at Churchill Downs that night. That one hurt. So Schering is paying for the sins of the mother in this case. And I just needed to tell that story because we're all horse players. Every one of us has that horse that when it shows up in the pedigree of some horse that's running now, you cringe and you recoil. Every horse player can relate to that.
And now, Andrew,
Yeah.
was it a total bog on the turf that
Yeah.
year too? Yeah,
It
was.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Trust me. I remember a
out of the
lot
bog.
about that race.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
out of the cloud. Yeah, that was when I got with Win. I got with win the other day. I had Complexity. Really liked Complexity.
Brutal.
And it was like the way the race 2 shaped up. You get the jump, you open up, nobody else is moving on a track like that. This horse isn't even on the screen. It just comes and gets you.
Yeah.
So,
What are you going to do? Now, this
We're gonna- Go ahead.
actually ties in to the other horse I'm going to use in the pick 5. And that's number 8, Walk-In Marrakesh, who started out in Great Britain as a 2-year-old last year and ran pretty well over soft and yielding going a season ago. Was third in a Group 2 over at Duel, and then came to Woodbine and was second beaten a nose in the Grade 1 Natalma over yielding going. Walk-In Marrakesh, yeah, she probably should have won last time in the Appalachian, but maybe she's just better on turf that has some give in it. She's been running over some very firm turf courses in her runs earlier this year. She's 6-1 on the morning line. If it rains, Walk-In Marrakesh moves way up. I've got to have her on the ticket. To me, it's too deep, 3-8. Schering should win, but I agree with Darin. I don't necessarily think she's a lock.
yeah, Walk-In Marrakesh I'll be using. See, with her, she's interesting because you look at her races overall, and you can and you say, okay, well, she hasn't won now, and since she's been coming over to North America, but when you break them, so we can easily look at her and say maybe she's the type of horse who doesn't mind settling for minor awards. But when you really break the races down individually, you see that she does have some legitimate excuses, and she really has run well in all of them. When you go through it, you mentioned she was just beaten a nose in the Natalma, which is a wicked beat. Then she comes off the bench. She doesn't run from September to March. She comes back. She's just beaten again behind Outburst, trying to come and get Outburst. She comes back. She has legitimate trouble at Gulfstream Park, and then legitimate trouble again when she's standing on the rail when Schering's making her move in the tap-in. She's in that great spot on the rail, and then she just has nowhere to go. She tries to duck inside. It's really tight. She can't get in. And then last time out, she's 4th. She's in the 2-path. She looms up. She moves right by the top 2. Alms battles back on the inside, and I think that's what hurt her. Alms battling back a little bit, took a little bit late out of Walk-In Marrakesh. And then all of a sudden, Enola Gay, who looked like she was just going to finish a decent third, about 100 yards for home, just hits this next switch and kicks in. So when you look at the races individually, you can say legitimate excuses for each one. If she has another 1 or 2 where she runs second or gets in trouble again, then I might be done with her. But I'm still not quite done with her yet. So I think we all agree that she's probably a use because it feels like Darin's going to go spread. You're using just those 2. I'm definitely using her. I'm definitely throwing in Hendy Woods because I think there's a little bit more to her. And I excuse the regret in a spot that's similar to this because I think she needed the race. She drew a tough post, and I think she'll be a little bit better down there. And yeah, if you're looking for maybe a bust out long shot to throw in, Lucky Betty, she's got ability. She has a clunker or two in there, and that may have thrown some people off, and I think she's got a little upside too. So yeah, and again, a big star, a short price, but a fun race where we all feel like you can go elsewhere in race number 9, second leg of that pick 5 sequence. Up next, it's the Ali Sheba. I thought this was a real interesting group too in here. We've got sort of the next tier of the top older horses. They might not be your top, few, but McKenzie coming into the year, many would have thought he was on that very, very short list. Owendale has some big races where he shows he's just as good. Mr. Freeze is another one. I mean, after his Gulfstream Park Mile, he looked like he was one of the top older horses. By My Standards has been very, very consistent, maybe one of the most consistent horses all throughout the year, just talking about them in general. I mean, even a horse like Silver Dust, after his fairgrounds races at the beginning of the year, he looked like he was going to be a solid older horse in the division, and he hasn't been quite as good, but he still hasn't been bad. This is a decent race here with some quality horses who just may not have quite lived up to their expectations for this year, but they all land in this spot, Darin. And McKenzie was super impressive winning this race last year, but he feels like he's lost a little bit of a step.
Yeah, I mean, McKenzie's. I really never guess right on him, to be honest with you. When I think he's going to run big, he's not, and when I'm against him, he runs. He runs one of his better races. I mean, look, he could absolutely win the race, and I'll use him defensively in some spots. But there's a couple of price horses in here that I'm going to use quite a bit. One of them you mentioned from the rail, and that's Silver Dust. Look, I know as he's gotten away from the fairgrounds, he hasn't been as good. But from a speed figure standpoint, he actually has been. He's been as good on the Beyer scale, and his last 2 races on the Ragazines are actually paired up 6s, which are 2 of his fastest races that he's ever run. In fact, but by far the 2 fastest races that he's run this year. So I'm not going to give up on him just yet. I'm just going to say 2 starts back, he pushed an aggressive pace, very fast pace, the race that Owendale came from nowhere to win. And last time, obviously, Tom's d'Etat just ran a monster race, and he just kind of clunked along to be third. I think both those races are better than people think they are. 15-1 is a huge price. I don't love the jockey because he did not give my filly a very nice ride at Ellis. But, we'll shy away from that from betting standpoint. The other horse that I like at a price is Mr. Freeze. Last time in the Met Mile, look, I never really hold Met Miles against horses because it is an extremely difficult race to excel at.
It's just different.
It is. It's a different race. It's a very fast one-turn mile, and you typically run into either a freak or a specialist at that distance. And Mr. Freeze probably is neither of those things. However, his Oaklawn handicap was very good. Obviously, his Gulfstream Park Mile was sensational. He has speed figures that are certainly fast enough to hit the ticket here at a price. I like how Manny Franco, fits this horse. And at 6-1 in the morning line, I think those 2 price plays stand out from a standpoint of value. I'm certainly using By My Standards and McKenzie defensively, but I won't have them paired up with a lot of other favorites in the sequence. I'm hoping to get either Silver Dust or Mr. Freeze to the winner's circle here.
Nice. Yeah, I'm Mr. Freeze is my top selection also. I'm right there with you. I think the last couple races he's got just the put a line right through the Met. And then the Oaklawn race, he ran pretty well. He actually, it was weird because he broke very well. He looked like he was going to be sitting in a perfect spot, and then he took back a little bit, a couple lengths, and that was just the difference between winning and losing because By My Standards ended up sitting a little closer than him. So I think just a different journey, a little bit more aggressive, a little more heady of a ride. That'll put him right there. And I hope you're right on Silver Dust. I'm going to use him in some. He could probably just sit second if they send Bodie from the outside, or even if Silver Dust goes. I think he's either on the lead or sitting maybe second, saving all the ground from behind, and he'll give you a good run for your money at a nice price. Andrew, who are we leaning at and looking towards in the Ali Sheba?
Well, Darin and I are approaching this in similar ways in that we're using By My Standards and McKenzie defensively. Now, if the McKenzie that won this race last year shows up, everyone's running for second money.
Yep.
The problem is, it sure seems like they've called a lot of audibles with this horse ever since the dud in the Met Mile. Now, to be fair, that was a track that was playing very kindly to early speed that day. Other rivals got the jump, and he just sort of ran in place, only being beaten 2 lengths by Vekoma going a flat mile. Not the worst thing in the world, but you have to think the trip to Saudi Arabia took something out of that horse.
Sure looks like it, right?
He was just okay winning the Triple Bend, a grade 2 race with a grade 3 kind of field. They ship him to the Met Mile. I liked him that day. I was really hoping he moved forward because, in my opinion, he ran a winning race in last year's Met Mile when he hit a bird turning for home, had some traffic trouble, and ran into Matoli to boot. I thought he deserved to win that day and that he'd make up for it in the 4th of July. Not so much. I'll use him defensively. I'll use by my standards defensively as well. I just don't necessarily think he's a grade 1 type horse. I think he's a horse that cleans up in grade 2, grade 3 level races. And this is the kind of race that you have to think, okay, these are his friends. He should run well. He should win. He's going to be a really short price, though, so I can't endorse him too heavily. I'll use one horse you mentioned, Gino, and that's number 3, Owendale. Owendale has shown he needs a pace meltdown. And it's very simple if you look at his running line. Last time out in the Stephen Foster, no meltdown, ran 5th. 2 back in the Blame, gets a meltdown, wins. 3 back in the Clark, gets a fairly hot pace, runs 2nd behind Tom's D'Etat. Breeders' Cup Classic, no meltdown, nope. Wins the Oklahoma Derby 5 back. Just if you look at him, the faster they go early, the better his chances figure to be. I think they're going to go pretty fast early. I have to use him. I'm also going to throw in the first of 2 ridiculous prices that I have on my pick 5 ticket here. Why can't Title Ready run well in here, second off the layoff for Dallas Stewart? Last time out, this horse was 10 lengths back, going 1 mile and a 16th at Keeneland. That's a short stretch configuration that is usually not friendly to closers. If you hit the top of the stretch in front, going that short stretch right of ground, you usually win. And they weren't necessarily flying early. They were going 46-2 the first half. So it was a solid pace, but it's not like it was suicidal up front. First start in a year for a new trainer. The horse rallies from way, way, way back, wins by a head. And I got to tell you, I love the recent workout. 5 furlongs and 58-3. This is another horse that is going to move forward with a very fast pace. And I think he gets it here. 20-1 seems like way too big a price on this horse, especially with Corey Lanerie riding back. Very few jockeys ride this Churchill Downs track better than Corey Lanerie. Needs to be on my tickets, and if this one comes flying late and shakes things up at a big price, I'm going to be pretty happy, guys.
Yeah, he actually ran.
Good.
He ran a 7 on the. He ran a 7 on the Ragazins in his first start back off the long layoff. And he had a pair of 5s last year. So he has races fast enough to put him right there. And that workout certainly does jump off the page. And, I actually have him on the bottom of some tickets and using him defensively a bit and pick 5s as well. He might be – I can't believe he'll be 20-1 because the horse hasn't been more than 8-1 in like his last 12 starts. But this is a test for class. But I agree with Andrew. He's a horse you got to take at least a couple of looks at.
Yeah, and for me, my approach in this race, I'm just throwing McKenzie out. I like McKenzie a lot. I've used him plenty of times, and I completely agree with what we said. I just think other horses are doing better right now, and this is a fun spot to take some other swings. And I'm going to be using by my standards because I think he's legitimate. So I have Mr. Freeze, I've got by my standards, I've got Owendale for many of the reasons Andrew mentioned, and I have Silver Dust. And then my horse right behind them with the question marks was Title Ready. And now with the little bit of the push from Andrew and the fact that Darin says on other figures and numbers he stands out, then he's absolutely a horse I'm going to flop in on my ticket, especially if my approach is throwing McKenzie out. And because it's going to be McKenzie and by my standards that take a lot of money in here. I don't want to have necessarily just both of them, I think, as just 2. I'd rather have 1 and some other options for prices. So, yeah, I'll probably play some tickets with, I think, those combinations of those 5 horses. For me, 5, 6 on top, 5, 6, 3, and 1, and then throwing in some and Title Ready in a fun renewal of the Ali Sheba. What's cool is that we know a lot of these horses, too. Like, we know McKenzie. He's been around for a while. By my standards now has come back and has had a good year. We know Owendale a little bit now. Silver Dust has been around for a while. Even Bodie Express is very well known for his antics. So We get to see a lot of these middle, just a cut below the best of the older horses in this solid renewing of the Grade 2 Ali Sheba. Moving on to race number 11, we're on to the second part of this pick 5 now, and it begins with the Grade 1 La Troyenne. And just from a discussion beginning standpoint, Darin, we start with Monomoy Girl in here, the 5-year-old mare who she's run 13 times. She's won 11 of them. She's actually crossed the wire 12 of them. One of those times she got DQ'd. She probably deserved to be DQ'd, but it was still one of those ones that could have gone either way. And then her other defeat, she was beaten by a neck. I mean, she's legitimately close to being perfect. She hadn't raced from November of 2018 to May of 2020. She came back and she beat a group that she was much better than, but that's still a very difficult thing to come off that long of a layoff. You never know, especially with a mare like this. They get a little older. They go one way or the other. Some want to keep running and others just, they don't care anymore. And she's awesome. She came back and she won again. She's great. She's a really cool story. So again, another one of these big name favorites that no matter how you're playing this race, you're at least going to, she's the one that you have to say, I'm playing or I'm playing against.
I'm playing against.
Nice.
And this comes down to one thing. I'm taking a stand with Vexatious.
Nice.
I think that this is the now mare. I think that she's come into her own the last couple of starts. Ran a really good second behind Monomoy Girl, going a 1-turn mile at Belmont. Stretched out to the 1 1/8 in the personal Ensign. Was in a dogfight with Midnight Bisou and beat her. I think she wants to go longer, so I think that she's better than that 1 mile race against Monomoy Girl 2 starts back suggests. She's paired up 5s, best races of her career on the Ragazines in the last 2. Monomoy Girl also ran a 5 in her last, but that was after running a 9 in her first start back. So unless she pairs that up, certainly could regress a little bit off that number, which was also a lifetime best, opposed to Vexatious, who paired up the number. So, and on top of that, you take a look at the pace scenario here. I think Lady Kate goes. I think Monomoy Girl probably sits off her. And I think Vexatious just sits right there in the pocket behind the 2 speeds, swings out 3 wide in the stretch, and then it's a dogfight between the 2 of them in the lane. I just think that she's coming to her own, and I think this is the time to jump on the bandwagon before she's, 4 to 5 in her next start. So for me, it's a single Vexatious or bust for me in the pick.
Nice. A strong single here. I liked this mare last year. I had her when she was sort of just picking up pieces. I had her in a fantasy league, and I think even back-to-back years I did, because she was always one of those that would show up. She's kind of grindy, but it's like the light bulb has gone on because she's been able to show more speed, and she's going to stay. So when she's up there close and she's not far away, you feel really good that she's not going to back up and that she's going to be able to pass some horses or at least hold her position where she is. Vexatious is fun and very cool for Jack Sisterson. They, Jack Sisterson, who used to work with Doug O'Neill, they actually, he and his dad, I don't know if it was bred or just got initially the horse that they ended up naming Fight on Gino. So that was really cool. When I was sick, I remember meeting Jack and taking pictures with Fight on Gino, who they had. So I'm always rooting for Jack. This would be a massive spot for him to get a big victory. AC, La Troyenne, Monomoy Girl. Do you have a strong opinion for or against like DZ does?
I liked Vexatious in the personal ensign last time out as an underneath horse underneath Midnight Bisou at a big price. Jose Lezcano gave Vexatious the ride of his life in that race, complete with at the end of it steering Vexatious out a little bit so that she could take a look at Midnight Bisou and fight back. That was a world-class ride. We give riders a lot of crap when we think they get it wrong. That means we have to give them credit when they get it right. That was a fantastic ride. This is relevant because Jose Lezcano isn't riding Vexatious here. Tyler Gaffleone is, and no disrespect to Tyler Gaffleone, he's a very good rider. That's a curious thing here. And also, Monomoy Girl is Monomoy Girl. I understand wanting to take a stand against Monomoy Girl, because if you take a stand against Monomoy Girl and you're right, you're going to be live for significant money heading into the Kentucky Oaks. Darin, I respect you for taking that stand. I disagree with you. I think Monomoy Girl is absolutely the horse to beat. Not exactly an easy horse to train, or so it seems. She's had her issues. That's why she was off for 18 months. And she was also off a couple of weeks after the Ruffian. If you look, she raced on July 11th. They gave her off until August the 2nd before her first published work back. So I needed to see a string of consistent, sharp works. She's got that, especially if you look starting August 15th, when it certainly looks like they turned it up on her. 5 furlongs in 1:01, then 6 furlongs in 1:13. If Monomoy Girl is right, I think everyone else is running for second money. The one thing I will say, though, is watch how the main track is playing earlier on in the card. If early speed is holding, another horse Darin mentioned, number 7, Lady Kate, is going to be an attractive long shot to throw in underneath. 15-1 on the morning line. Look, maybe this horse is just a one-turn horse trying 2 turns against better horses, in which case she's going to finish 6th, beaten about 30 lengths. Having said that, Churchill Downs on big days tends to be very kind to speed. And if Lady Kate gets the kind of trip where she goes 23 and change to the quarter, 47 to the half, she might have enough left late to hold on for second or third at a really big price. But from a pick 5 standpoint, I'm singling Monomoy Girl and moving on.
It's funny. I have an approach. This is why I love when we have discussions with multiple people and not just 2. It's always nice to have 3 or 4 because you get different approaches that everybody has. And it seems like in most of the races we've had, between the 3 of us, they're sort of different, but you can see where everybody's going. And this one's funny too, because I'm right in the middle of the both of you. I don't love Monomoy Girl, but I don't think she's a toss, so I'm actually going to be using her. I'm going to be using Vexatious. I'm even going to throw in the one horse who is a super strange horse, and that's She's a Julie.
I was going to ask about that, because if she shows up, she probably runs second. Mm-hmm. If she doesn't show up, it's not pretty.
No, and she's got the form where she just throws in a clunker and then she comes back with a really good one. And I heard I read that in an article the Connection say they have no idea what happened last out, which I always think is kind of funny. It's like, we don't know. She just didn't run well. And he said some horses just don't like Monmouth, and that was that. He said she's training well. She's looking good. If she's 5-1-ish, if she's like the 4th choice in this race, she likes Churchill. She has no problem with the trip, and she's kind of versatile. She has some speed, but she can grind and pass horses if she has to. So if Monomoy Girl or Vexatious don't jump up with big races, I think She's a Julie can get in the mix. And then if we're looking for maybe some underneath horses as prices to complete some of the exotics, I do think Saracosa is running well right now and is in nice form. She doesn't feel that far behind. I mean, she was behind Dunbar Road. She's not completely disgraced against CC, Serengeti Empress, who are good when they're at their best, and they're capable of really, really good. She was 3 deep into the turn in a small field. She was hooked wide all the way around. She was 4 wide at the top of the lane. She was a clear-cut second in the Delaware handicap. I think she can absolutely pick up some pieces here and complete your try, and maybe you flop her in on one ticket where you're really trying to get a little crazy. So different horses to look at. Just a weird one, and She's a Julie who I want to flop in at least. I think on one, but yeah, I mean,
Gino. By the way, just to be clear, I don't want to say that I think that Monomoy Girl was a toss.
No, it's just single against.
View,
That's the ticket structure.
My view of it is simply a mathematical one, whereas I think Vexatious's chances to win will not be reflected as they should in the multi-race exotics, meaning
100% agree.
I think the value of her winning this race will be far greater in terms of connecting on a pick 4 or a pick 5 than it will, let's say, in the win pool. And that I think is something that is worth trying to take advantage of. If Monomoy Girl wins, so be it. But I think Vexatious, her value is exponentially more in this spot than it should be, given this type of betting sequence.
Yeah, and you're looking at a sequence that, okay, in the 8 bells, Monday Call and 4 Graces could be tough. In Edgewood, Sharing, could be really tough. You got to take a stand somewhere, right? In the Ali Sheba, if you get a McKinsey or a By My Standards home, and then you head into this race and you've got just Monomoy Girl on your ticket, like you have to pick and choose 1 or 2 of these races where you're going to say, okay, you know what? I respect Sharing. I respect Monomoy Girl. I respect Monday, whoever it is. But one of them I got to play against, because if you just set your ticket up that way, you're not going to make a whole ton of money. It's just not the way to really structure a ticket. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I love what you're doing here. It's not a disrespect for Monomoy Girl. It's just, hey, you might be catching a peaking horse at the right time, whereas people know Monomoy Girl more as a name horse, and that separation is going to be more like, 5, 10, 15 times in those exotic pools.
Absolutely. And that's why I said, even though it's not the approach that I'm going, I respect the heck out of Darin for doing that, because if you step out and you hit one of those singles, that's how you have a life-changing score. It doesn't necessarily take 50-1 in every race.
Nope.
You don't need that. What you need is beat the favorites with middle-priced horses that are overvalued in these multi-race wagers. That's the key here, because in a pool this size, anytime a favorite goes down, those payoffs are going to shoot way, way, way up.
Let's close things out in the Kentucky Oaks. So how about this? It's just a field of 9. We've got 3 50-1 shots on the morning line out of the 9, which you just don't see in this day of age of racing anymore, because people love playing long shots, so they always bet $2 to win on the longest shots in the field. We don't even really see that in the Derby anymore, but we might this year. It might be a little bit different with the way the horses in the field are and how legitimate contenders they are, many of them. Okay, DZ, the Oaks. Let's just kind of go inside out. It's only a field of 9, so we can give some thoughts on everyone and some quick hits on each one. So we'll go around in a circle. I'll start with Swiss Skydiver, and then you can go DZ, and then Andrew, you give some thoughts after. For me, she's just such a monster. I just want to mention, win or lose, no matter what, I love a filly like this that has run straight from November on with 0 breaks, and look at the way where she's been. Churchill Downs to Tampa, to Fairgrounds, to Gulfstream, to Oaklawn, to Santa Anita, to Keeneland, to Saratoga. From 7 furlongs to 1 16th, to 1 1/8, to 1 1/4. I mean, that is damn impressive. She raced against the boys and finished second behind Art Collector, who came back to win. And unfortunately, Art Collector won't be in the Derby. He would have been your at least third choice, probably your second choice in the Derby if he was in there. She's awesome. And she can sit if she has to, but she's pretty quick, and she's become more of a right on the lead or pressing type. And, I mean, Darin, when we look at this race from a tactical standpoint, I think a lot of it's we're going to find out very early what happens with Swiss Skydiver and with Gamine, and what the plans are with these two. Who goes, who sits, are they going to be battling? Does one take off and try to let the other go? That's what's going to be fascinating to me early on.
No question, and we'll get to the pace scenario and how I think that's going to actually impact how I view this race from a handicapping standpoint after we go through it. But Swiss Skydiver, nothing but respect for her. I could not believe the disrespect that she was getting on Twitter going into the Alabama, where people were trying to beat her off of the Bluegrass second to Art Collector, who had already come back and looked like a good thing winning again at Ellis. Trying to take this 1 1/4 approach and saying that this was going to beat her. And then at the end of the race, a lot of people were saying, yeah, she won, but look how gassed she was. Well, number one, I don't know how gassed she was. She was geared down. Was she switching leads? Yeah, but you tend to see that happen when a horse is in front by 6 lengths and they're being geared down. Number two, it was at the end of a 1 1/4 race. She's never going to have to probably run that far again, so who cares if she was tired at the end of a 1 1/4 race. Tons of ability, speed figures on the incline. Her best Ragozin number was in the Fantasy. She came back and paired that up in the Alabama. She ran credibly against the boys in the Bluegrass. She did take advantage of probably a double bias of rail and speed in the Santa Anita Oaks, but nothing but respect for her. For me, the fact that she's second choice in this race almost seems crazy. But that being said, can she win this race? Of course she can. And in my opinion, you could probably even say she's the most likely winner.
Swiss Skydiver made a believer out of me in the Bluegrass. Earlier in the year, way back in the Grade 2 Gulfstream Park Oaks, she sat the most perfect trip in the history of perfect trips. I remember this because I needed Lake Avenue really badly that day, and the jockey of Lake Avenue inexplicably rated the horse.
Mm-hmm. She didn't look like she was going to be anywhere near the lead on paper. It looked like there were, I think, Spice is Nice, Lucrezia, Lake Avenue, Tonalist Shape. They were all in that race, and they had all shown more speed than she had been showing recently.
Yeah. So Paco Lopez, the speed rider that he is, puts Swiss Skydiver on the lead. You get to the half in 49 with Paco up, the race is over. Okay, whatever. Goes to Oaklawn, runs in the Fantasy. Looked pretty good that day. I've never really been all that sold on Venetian Harbor. So
she was 16-1 that day. Nobody believed in her that day either.
No. And I admittedly was not a big believer in Swiss Skydiver at that point either. She goes to Santa Anita to run in the Santa Anita Oaks, grade 2 against 3 other horses. Nice work if you can get it, right? Wasn't a believer in the Bluegrass. Loved Art Collector. One of the biggest win bets of my life was on Art Collector in that race. Loved that horse. Swiss Skydiver ran a hell of a race that day. You go that fast early. She was going 46-3 to the half, 110-3 for 6 furlongs. That's legit racehorse time. And when Art Collector ranged up at the top of the stretch, Swiss Skydiver fought back. She didn't roll over. She tried. Art Collector just had a brilliant trip that day and pulled away late. Swiss Skydiver beat the third-place finisher, Rushy, another decent horse, by almost 5 lengths. That's a heck of a race that horse ran. Comes back in the Alabama. 1.25 miles. Horse is not necessarily bred to get 1.25 miles. By Daredevil, out of a Johannesburg mare. You don't necessarily expect a horse to get 1.25 miles. That was really impressive. 102 by her speed figure. Could have been a couple points faster than that if she had to be. She didn't. Swiss Skydiver is going to be very tough to beat. I like that she has tactical speed, but does not necessarily need the lead in order to run well. She may well get it, or at the very least, make Gamine work very hard to get it, but she's not going to necessarily be thrown off if she's sitting second or third early. Big chance on the rail for trainer Ken McPeak, who pulled off a really cool prank earlier in the week when he sent Swiss Skydiver out to jog in the Kentucky Derby saddlecloth and made everybody go, wait, what?
Yeah. I mean, if she was in the Derby, she was probably the
third or
third
fourth
choice. Yeah. I mean, especially after Art Collector coming out, maybe right there with probably after Honor AP, probably then right there with Authentic, I'd imagine. So yeah, she's awesome. Let's get the tempers rising. She's a bomb. She earlier in the year at Fairgrounds, she seemed like one of these Dallas Stewart types that was going to start to peak and maybe would be a horse that you could play in the Kentucky Oaks as a bomb underneath to pick things up. She has no speed at all, Darin. And in situations like this, sometimes, yeah, it might work out great. They might go quick early, but other situations, horses like this just get outrun. I'm not sure which one is going to be the case for her. She was mid-pack last time out. She was wide all the way. She was 4 wide at the top of the lane. She showed some late energy to get up for second. I wouldn't be completely shocked if she finished third or fourth in here at a massive price. I can't envision a race that she wins this.
Yeah, I mean, a few of the other fillies have to no-show, to get her on the ticket, which is entirely possible.
Mm-hmm.
And we could talk about, as we go through those fillies, how that could happen. We've seen Dallas Stewart run second in the Kentucky Derby with monstrous prices a couple of times. Maybe he'll do it here in the Oaks, who knows? But she needs to improve substantially from a speed figure standpoint, both Ragozins and from a buyer standpoint. Yeah, she ran back to a better race last time at Ellis, but that was a $25,000 A other than. She only earned a 78 by her speed figure. It was on a muddy track. She was a beaten favorite that day by Jeweled Princess. Yeah, I mean, look, respect Leparoux, respect Stewart. She's going to need quite a few to no-show and a lot of these things to fall apart to get a piece of it.
Gentlemen, you remember when I said I had a second crazy horse on my ticket?
Nice.
This is the second crazy horse.
I mean, I could see, like I said, there's a world where this one is in the mix for sure. The race has got to fall apart. They got to go quick early, but it's only a small field. There are 3 or 4 other horses that I would actually probably prefer Tempers Rising over. So yeah, Andrew, sell us a little bit more.
Okay. Pete Aiello asked a really good question on Twitter earlier today, and I'm going to pose this to you guys. What's the over-under for the first half mile of this race?
46.
Gino?
That's very fair. Yeah, I'd say maybe slightly over, slightly, but not much. Yeah.
If they go 45 and change, I think Tempers Rising has a chance. Swiss Skydiver wants to be close. Doesn't necessarily need the lead, wants to be close. Donna Veloce, sprinter speed, will likely go. Speech wants to be close. Gamine, we know she's going to be forwardly placed. She Dares the Devil. Ken Rate has some tactical speed. Hopeful Growth has some tactical speed. I think they're going to go early. And if they go early to the point where they're going 22 and change for the quarter, 45 and 3 to the half, I think Tempers Rising has a really good chance to be moving forward when everyone else is moving backward. Now, this is pretty similar to the other Dallas Stewart trainee I have on my ticket. Is this horse good enough to win? I don't know.
Yeah.
She certainly, and I'm going to say this, she certainly needs everything in the world to go right, and she needs to run a career best race.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at the fairgrounds races, in January, she was third beaten a neck by Finite, back when Finite was going really, really well. She was fourth in the Rachel Alexandra, had a really troubled trip that day, comes back and runs a pretty good second in the Fairgrounds Oaks behind a horse named Bonnie South, who just finished second in the Alabama behind Swiss Skydiver. Darin, you mentioned the mathematical equation here with Vexatious in the previous race and how it pays to include those horses on your ticket. Do I think Tempers Rising has a 2% chance out of 100 to win this race? I think there are probably 6 or 7 times out of 100 that they run this race, they go ridiculously fast early on, and Tempers Rising beneath Julien Leparoux is moving forward late and has a big chance to win it with an eighth of a mile to go. I need to use this horse, especially at the likely price. If this horse gets home, that, I'm going to say, knocks out a lot of tickets.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, what's the way you look at this, if you like Tempers Rising, and if you're envisioning the race shaping up in just like you said, in a couple small versions where you get a Swiss Skydiver, Donna Veloce, Speech, Gamine, She Dares the Devil, Hopeful Growth, all up a little too close to the pace, all trying to go quick or press, and they all end up, becoming a nuisance to each other. Now you're looking at a race where it's Tempers Rising, Bayerness, and Dream Marie. You have to break it down that way. Again, for a horse that's 50 to 1, I would never talk you off that one, and I love the case that you built for Tempers Rising there. As we move to total intriguing wild card in this race, Darin, with Donna Veloce, who she is a very talented filly, and if she had one race under her belt before here, I would think she's a real intriguing prospect. This just feels like a really, really tough task for her, not having raced since March. And even more than that, she had 3 months of a break prior to that. We know how talented she is. She almost won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile in her second start. And the horses and the fillies from that group haven't come back and been quite awesome yet. But she dusted Speech early in the year. Speech has improved and become very good there. I don't think there's a question about the talent with Donna Veloce. She just feels like a filly who's had some issues, and this is to me a little bit more than she might be able to deal with off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, she's so talented, and you look at a 15 to 1 morning line on a filly here that, if I would have told you were getting 15 to 1 on her, even in, mid-April when we knew that the race was getting moved back, you would have said, yeah, okay. The problem, of course, is that she just hasn't run again. As you said, it's a really, really weird spot, to say the least. Now, look, would it shock me if she turns out to be an absolute crazy freak and wins this race somehow? No, it wouldn't shock me, because the talent has been proven that it's possible. But she needs to improve substantially from a buyer standpoint and substantially from a Ragozin standpoint. And she's got to do it off of a really, really long layoff.
And go farther than she's ever gone.
And go
off
farther
that layoff.
than she's ever. It just seems like it's too much to ask. If this filly runs like a good third in this race, it's going to speak volumes as to how good she is, and what a career she'll have. A part of me is rooting for her because if she wins this race, it means that she's an absolute superstar. But from a handicapping standpoint, it's going to be tough for her to win. But hey, if you're going to get close to that 15-1 and you think she's just that darn good, I'm not going to talk you off her.
One of the fantasy leagues that I'm in had a draft earlier today, and she was still around because somebody dropped her since she hasn't raced in a while. And I looked and I was, she's out there. And I picked her because this league goes through the very end of the calendar year. So I figure, maybe I get 3 races out of her because if she runs well, at least okay here, and then maybe you come back and you get a race from her in the Breeders' Cup, and then she feels like a filly that might be pointing towards the Malibu at the end of the year also. I could see her. So maybe I get a couple of shots at graded stakes with her. I like her a lot. She's a total wild card in here, Andrew, but it's just she hasn't raced since March. And even, like I said, even before that, just one race so far this year.
That's true. I'm going to use her defensively as a B in here. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've noticed about Churchill, and a lot of people have made light about this, the main track, yes, it's dirt. But if you've got turf pedigree, you skip over it. Dona Veloce has a 350 Turf Tomlinson number, and the bottom side of her pedigree, it's all European. It is all turf. I think Dona Veloce may very well find this ground to her liking. I like the fact that she's got tactical speed, but doesn't necessarily need the lead in order to run well. By all indications, has been working well at Del Mar. Look, understanding everything Darin said, understanding that, look, horses don't come off of 6-month layoffs to win these kinds of races against these kinds of horses. Dona Veloce, to me, is a 2x4 horse. And the term I'm going to explain here is, if you don't use this horse, and this horse wins, you're going to want to hit yourself in the head with a 2x4.
Oh!
So you may as well use the horse. And that's what I'm going to do in some capacity. This is not an A. I'm not putting this horse in the same company as Swiss Skydiver and Gamine. But this is a horse that's going to be a B on my tickets and is going to be on some of my tickets to where if this horse goes off, I don't think we're going to get 15-1. I think 10 or 12-1 is probably more likely. If this horse goes off at 10-1 and wins and pays $22, and I'm 4 out of 5 in the pick 5 because I didn't use Dona Veloce, I'm going to be pretty pissed off. So I'm going to use that horse. I've got the bankroll to do that because I singled Monomoy Girl and went pretty slim in most of the other races. So I'll throw this one in. There are far worse 15-1 shots that you'll see.
Absolutely. And I said Malibu earlier. I meant La Brea. Malibu is for the 3-year-old for the boys. La Brea is the race at the end of the year
there's
for the 3-year-old fillies.
There's nothing saying she can't run.
No,
in Malibu.
Not at all. You're right. But I know there would be 1 or 2 people out there that would correct me. So I just want to correct myself.
Horse racing.
I said, as soon as I said it,
I
said it and I was like, Malibu, there's something wrong with what I just said. What was I saying? And I caught myself not long after. So we move on to Speech, who she's another horse in here. She is just a quality animal, DZ, and she's been unlucky because she was defeated by Dona Veloce when Dona Veloce was really good, and I think Speech was still kind of figuring out who she was. Speech actually was in front of Dona Veloce that day early, and Veloce sat and went by her at Santa Anita in the Santa Isabel. Then Speech gets as close as anyone's gotten to Gamine, and we find out that day that Gamine actually tested positive for a substance and was disqualified from the win that day. I mean, I thought Speech was going to run right by. You could tell Vic Stauffer thought she was going to run right by when you heard his voice. Unfortunately, Gamine, she didn't. For those of you back Speech, Gamine digs in. She ends up crossing the wire first, but she gets DQ'd later, which does nothing to help all of us bettors who bet Speech. Can we come back in the Santa Anita? Unless you read the article that Darin posted on that Darin just wrote on DRF about the harness case that may open things like this up in the future for bettors who may get screwed. Now there's a precedent set, which was a great article you wrote, Darin, just a few days ago. Nonetheless, Speech comes back, and it's a field of 4, and Swiss Skydiver gets out front, and she's chasing her. She's just got no shot there. It's pretty crazy when you look back and see that in a field of 5 in the Ashland, she was 4-1 in that field. and she just sat behind him and exploded. Can she sit off? Is she heading in the right direction? Is she good enough now to compete with these top two, DZ?
Yeah, I loved her in the Ashland, and at the price, I really like her here.
Me too.
I mean, on paper, look, can Gamine and Swiss Skydiver just be so much better that they play cat and mouse and kick away from the field, and it's a battle of wills between the two of them? Sure. But on paper, Gamine goes, Swiss Skydiver doesn't want to let her get too far away, and Speech is just sitting right there in the catbird seat behind the two of them, poised to pounce, and it's just a matter of, is she good enough? Maybe under normal circumstances, maybe she's not quite. But like you said, she was a neck off Gamine in that race back in May. She chased Swiss Skydiver on a speed-favoring track in a 4-horse field. Now she's going to get the 1 1/8. It seems that she's going to be fine handling that. She's going to be right behind these two speeds in a great spot in the pocket, stalking them. And, look, from a speed figure standpoint, is she running the 108s and the 110s of Gamine? No. But Gamine's also doing that going 7 furlongs in a mile, 1 turn, so it's a little bit different. Also, Speech's last race ran a 5 on the Ragazins, which obviously makes her a huge contender. It was her best speed figure there ever. Can she bounce off of it? Sure. But she's not going to be favored. She's going to be no worse than third choice. She'll probably get every bit of that 5-1. And at that price, I will take the chance that she might pair that number up and really take advantage of how this works out. And, I just think the way it looks on paper, she gets the trip of trips here. And it's just a question if she's good enough. And I think the way the race shapes up, she just might be.
I thought the Ashland was a tale of two rides. I thought Javier Castellano gave Speech a very good ride. I thought Joel Rosario threw in a clunker aboard Venetian Harbor that day.
Was that the first or the second time, according to the owners?
I don't know what the owners said, but in watching that race, he tried to back down Venetian Harbor, 24 to the quarter, 47 to the half. Look, I understand that Venetian Harbor was a 7 furlong to a mile type, trying a 1 1/16, that you want to try to save something for the end. But going the 1 1/16 at Keeneland, it doesn't hurt you to be aggressive up front. Joel Rosario was not. And if you rewatch that race, Rosario did not go to the stick until Speech was 3/4 of a length past. Don't get me wrong. Speech ran well. Having said that, I'm against her in this spot because I'm looking at the races 2, 3, and 4 back. She was 4 lengths behind Swiss Skydiver. Understanding that was a 4-horse field, Swiss Skydiver got loose, fine. She was beaten a neck by Gamine. Fine. Good effort that day. I can actually understand, okay, if we're betting off of that effort, that's fine. Beaten more than 4 lengths by Dona Veloce in the Santa Isabel. Dona Veloce is going to be 3 times the price of Speech. I think Speech is a little bit of an underlay, just simply based off the fact that she has to beat 3 horses that have beaten her, and in some cases beaten her quite handily in the past. I respect these connections. I think Mike McCarthy does a tremendous job with not a lot of stock compared to some of the bigger barns in the country. He's a former Todd Pletcher assistant, had City of Light a couple of years ago. Really good horseman that is starting to get those numbers, and that's very good for him because he's an excellent horseman and deserves every opportunity he can get. I'm a big fan of his. Having said that, 5-1 seems a little bit short to me. And while I'm going to take shots with the 2 far bigger prices to the inside, Speech is the 1 shorter price that I'm not going to use.
I love the difference of
real quick, Gino. Yeah, real quick. So just to address what Andrew said regarding the race in the Santa Isabel, I understand she got beat 4 1/4 by Dona Veloce in that spot. Her previous 3 starts were 5 furlongs on the turf, 6 furlongs, and 6 furlongs. So she was stretching out from a sprint to a dirt route the first time. So take that into account.
And she got caught up. It wasn't a great ride either. She got caught up pressing wide all the way around. They were 3 battling across, and Donna just sat perfect behind them and angled out and around.
Yeah, she got caught up in a duel with the horse that she was dueling with, got beat a dozen lengths in that spot and stopped on a dime in the stretch. I think that race was better than it looks on paper when you factor all of that in. And I think the fact that she was off of that race was a neck off Gamine, was second to Swiss Skydiver, and then really excelled in the Ashland, tells you, okay, she got her legs under in that first route start. I think her last couple of efforts show you the kind of filly that she is. And I think she's just a much better filly now than she was 6-7 months ago.
Entirely possible. And the one other thing that I'll mention before we move on is what I mentioned about Churchill Downs being very kind to horses with turf pedigrees. By Mr. Speaker, grade 1 winner on turf, out of a mare by Freud, who was a full to Giants Causeway. So there's a lot of turf pedigree here. Hasn't tried Churchill Downs in the afternoons. Really good 4 furlong workout on August 28th. I wouldn't necessarily be shocked if she won, but
you just want more.
Others.
You want a little more than than you get on her. And for me, I think she's a great price. And I think a lot of that has to do with, for me, I'm playing against Gamine. We get to Gamine next, and like I said, when you look at the sequence, you look at the way the Friday card is with a lot of these short price favorites throughout, you have to pick and choose some of your spots. I prefer Swiss Skydiver over her. I'll probably play one ticket where I'm just using Swiss Skydiver in speech, and then maybe I'll play one where I throw in maybe a She Dares the Devil and one other crazy price horse or two, just in case, Donna Veloce maybe, and maybe I'll even flop in Andrew's crazy price just because if that horse won, I'd love to share in it with him also. But I mean, DZ, we talk about her. I mean, she's crossed the wire all 4 times first. She's incredibly talented. There's no doubt about that. But she does have the issue where she has the positive test. And ever since then, I've kind of looked at her a little bit differently. I think it's hard not to when we have these really good horses. And who knows, again, it could have been a random contaminated thing. It could have been something more. We just don't know. We don't really get a whole lot of information ever in horse racing, which sucks for us as bettors because we're just kind of sitting here guessing at everything. But since that race where she was almost defeated, she's come back and cut back in distance twice. She went a mile and then 7 furlongs in races where she was just better, and she was hands down had a major pace advantage. Andrew mentioned something about the Venetian Harbor ride at Keeneland. Well, the owner of Venetian Harbor was very upset with the ride that they got in the test. They wanted, and they specifically told rider Rosario the instructions were to go as fast as you can, as hard as you can, try to get in front of Gamine, at the very least battle and go fast. We don't want you to rate. And when you watch the way that race was, Joel kind of grabs a hold pretty early on, and instead of battling, he sort of rides for second. And you pick up a grade 1 placing, that's fine. But the owner was really upset. He said, "I don't care about second. I wanted to win this race. I wanted to take a shot against him." So she's going to be going farther than she's ever gone. She's going to be dealing with some legitimate pressure and a legitimate animal down to her inside. And I've got that weird thing with the test still in the back of my mind and everything. So I'm playing against her, Darin. I have no knocks on her talent. I have no knocks. She could win this race, and she's the type that if she wins by 5, it would be zero shock if she just dusts this field and Swiss Skydiver couldn't even keep up with her. I just don't get that feeling, though. I'll play against her at the price. I'll use Swiss. I'll use Speech, maybe a couple others, but no Gamine for me.
I'm with you, and I read it very similarly. Look, her three dynamic wins were 1-turn races. I'm not gonna hold a win against her, but look, let's be fair. Her least impressive win was the time that she went around 2 turns at Oaklawn. Speech was only a neck behind her in that spot, and I think Speech is a better animal now than she was 4 months ago. She's going to get pressure like she hasn't seen before. Regarding the whole owners being angry about Rosario and Venetian Harbor, look, you want an aggressive ride in that spot. Maybe don't put Joel Rosario on.
And that's true. Yeah.
He's not exactly known as the most aggressive rider in the history of horse racing. But that aside, the speed figures are tremendous. She ran a 2 1/4 on the sheets 2 back, a 3 3/4 last time. So look, there's some slight regression there. Was it just because she was completely in hand? I mean, she was in hand in both starts. So, who knows? If you read the rags and sheets, you're supposed to, when you look at those numbers, they tell you just read the numbers and take everything else out of the equation because the patterns are the patterns, and that's what it is. Maybe she regresses again off of the 3 3/4 and comes back enough that she gets beat. But as a handicapper, going a mile and an eighth, having to go faster probably than she has around 2 turns before. I don't think she's going 23-1, 46-3 here, while coasting along on an easy lead. All of that wrapped in a bow tells me to play against. That's what I'm going to do here. If she wins, I lose. Simple as that.
I've got a Rosario story that I need to tell now, and I've been sitting on this story, I kid you not, for 8 years. So my first, no, this is a good one. My first summer working full-time in Saratoga was 2012, and I sat in the Saratoga press box one of the last summers in which it was fully occupied. I was sitting behind a murderer's row of people in the front. We had John Preachy, Paul Moran, guys from the New York Daily News, guys from the New York Post. Real education doing that. Paul Moran, God bless his soul, unfortunately passed away several years ago, owned a filly by the name of Benita Sonata. And Benita Sonata was a New York bred that was running in Saratoga, had Joel Rosario aboard before Joel Rosario was Joel Rosario in all caps. Well, the instructions were for Joel Rosario to go make the lead. Joel Rosario rides passively. Horse finishes third or fourth. Paul Moran's really ticked off. Very next race, Joel Rosario boots a horse on the lead. It's a 4-5 favorite. The horse is expected to win, and the horse jogs. Ed Fontaine from the New York Post looks straight at Paul Moran and goes, Joel Rosario, best gate rider in the country. And Paul Moran looks at Ed Fontaine with a look that would melt steel. It has been ingrained in my mind for 8 years. It's one of the best stories that I've gotten. I haven't had a chance to really share it much because it hasn't really been applicable. But you get Joel Rosario at his best, he's a fantastic world-class rider. You get Joel Rosario at his worst, not pretty. Anyway, moving on to another piece of wisdom that was handed down to me by a legend of the New York turf, one Harvey Pack. Never bet a horse as the favorite to do something it's never done before. Gamine will almost certainly be favored. I don't know if the spread is going to be as wide as the morning line is. Gamine will probably drift up a little bit to 6-5, 7-5. I think 8-5 or so is about right on Swiss Skydiver. Gamine might win. If Gamine goes out and the other riders grab, which, going to be honest, not unprecedented on a big stage.
In this day and age, especially. We see a lot of that in this era. Yeah.
We mentioned the over-under for the first half mile. If they go, I would say the tipping point is 46-4. If they go that or slower and Gamine's on the lead, Gamine wins. Problem is, I don't think they're going to go that slow. I think Gamine is going to be tested up front, and she's going to have a big test to pass. Now, if you go by buyer speed figures, she is absolutely the horse to beat. I'm looking at the pedigree here. Into Mischief is a world-class sire. All of his 2-year-olds win. All of his 2-year-olds can run. That's great. Mile and an eighth. And bottom side of the pedigree, a Calf Wayne filly. Calf Wayne was a very good 2-year-old. Believe was a grade 1 winner as a 2-year-old. Going this long, and I understand why you guys are playing against her. I will solely use her defensively in this spot. Again, simply because if they go 46-4 to the half, it's over. Cue the Vince Carter taunt after the dunk contest. It's over. Having said that, do I think such a situation is likely? No.
Gamine, talented, but definitely some, you can definitely carve some holes. And you can see from the three of us where we would be not surprised in the least if she jogs, but at the price, she's worth it. We get to Bayerness here, who, I mean, she beat Swiss Skydiver. Her first 2 starts, I thought she was going to be a really, really nice filly, and then she just hasn't progressed. She's kind of grindy. I think there are a few fillies in here that the connections looked at this field and said, I could probably finish third in here. That would be pretty cool to get, finish third in the Oaks. I might be able to do that. And Bayerness, I think, is one of them. DZ, I have to see more. I really don't know what she is. Is she want to be close? Does she want to come from off of it? What is her style? I don't really know. For me, I can't really make too much of a case for her.
Yeah, I mean, taking a look, third start back off the form cycle, although you're looking at a near 60-day, break since that last start. So it's not really that much of a third start off the layoff situation. I I'd like to find some weird things with horses. Where did the workout come from on July 25th where this thing breezed best out of 90 going 46-4?
Right.
If this race was being run on August the 1st, maybe she'd be a little bit fitter. I don't know, because since then she's just had these blowouts. The training into this race is kind of weird to have the screws tightened at the end of July and just kind of take your foot off the gas pedal a bit lately. The last move in 48 was a nice one over the training track at Churchill. But, look, from a buyer standpoint, she's nowhere close. From a Ragozin standpoint, she's nowhere close. If you want to look and say, anybody could be third, okay. But this one might be the last horse that I would pick to be third in the field. She won't be anywhere on my tickets.
I think she's a nice one-turn horse. That's ultimately the reason she started her career 2 for 2 with a couple of nice races. She paired up 76 buyer speed figures as a 2-year-old. That's not easy to do. They knew this horse had some potential because they paid $350,000 for this horse at auction, which I also think is a reason why they're running in this race. One check cuts that price tag. All of a sudden you're sitting pretty from a profit-loss perspective. But this is a horse that just doesn't seem to have moved forward off that 2-year-old form. She's got a chance to win some races moving forward. I don't think this one's one of them.
Yep. Let's get to She Dares the Devil. She, you look at her recent form, and she beat up on a couple fields that she was better than in her last 2. What's very nice is that, positives. She's won 3 of her last 4. She's proven at Churchill. She has enough speed to where she probably won't. You don't think she's going to necessarily get outrun by Gamine and Swiss Skydiver if they open up. She doesn't have to be way out of it, but she can sit and pass horses, which she's proven. When she faced Swiss Skydiver at Oaklawn, she had a brutal trip. You can put a line right through that. She had legitimate trouble that day. She never got a shot. And DZ, my only concern with her is just the figures. Like on paper, the horse that she is, the filly that she is, I like, and I think if you're looking outside of the top 2 and then maybe even Speech, she would, for me, for sure be the next one to look at. And I think she really could. But when I see the figures and the numbers, does she have enough of a chance on those to compete with the top couple in here?
I'll put it to you this way. So Andrew highlighted a horse earlier that he said was like a crazy long shot in Tempers Rising that he thought had a shot if everything went her way. She Dares the Devil is not nearly as crazy. But if you ask me, outside of the logical horses, who do you look at? This filly for me has some appeal.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the last 2 starts; she was just much the best. I think people are going to look at this race and they're going to say, "Oh wow, well she went wire to wire 2 back and she sat just off the pace last time. She's going to be right there, forwardly placed." I don't think so. I think those 2 races were a product of she was just that much better than everybody else, and they put her in the race early, not to screw around. They knew what the target was. They wanted to continue to progress her and move her forward, and she ran 2 dynamite races against horses that she should have run 2 dynamite races against. I think this horse is going to be sitting 5th or 6th early, 6-7 lengths off of the lead. I think it's going to be much more in line with her effort, kind of a combination of the fantasy and the honeybee. I think she's going to be fairly well off the pace in a somewhat of a stalking/closing position. I think she's going to get enough pace in front of her that she's going to make a move on the turn. Is she good enough to run by them all? Probably not. But in exotics, if Gamine and Swiss Skydiver do something crazy and only one of them survives the duel, I would have no problem in saying that She Dares the Devil is a horse that could get up second, certainly get up third. So for me, 20-1, if you're looking for a long shot, this is probably the one that you want to be on.
The more I look at this horse, the more I like this horse.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to win, but certainly to run second or third. And in fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Brad Cox's instructions to Florent Giroux are the French translation for ride for third. Because if you get a grade 1 placing with this kind of horse, all of a sudden the broodmare value shoots straight up. Now, looking at this horse's recent form, first of all, question for you guys. Do you guys know what the story is behind the 2 trainer changes this horse has had? Because that's curious.
No.
I mean, it's not like Mark Cassie can't train. It's not like Simon Callahan can't train. Brad Cox is world class, obviously, but that's curious. So she comes into the Brad Cox barn, probably needs the first race on February 15th. Second beaten less than a length by Bonnie South, who next time out wins a graded stakes race at Fairgrounds. No issue there. Wins the Honeybee by 3/4 of a length. Obviously, no issue there. Doesn't sit her preferred trip in the fantasy. Had some traffic going around the turn. Was third, well beaten by Swiss Skydiver. But you can argue that she never really had a chance to run a race.
Yep, she had trouble multiple times, too, at the start going into the turn, and then she got squeezed, and then she starts to move up the rail. She loses all of her momentum. So it was actually pretty impressive that she was able to still finish third and beat a lot of horses in that race after that trouble.
Yeah, it was a 14-horse field. We're not talking third of 5 here. We're talking third of 14. So there's some class there. Beats up on 2 weaker groups in each of the last 2 starts. Has been training forwardly. She would need others to regress significantly, and she would need to run a career best race. Catch is, I think she's sitting on a career best race. I just don't think that career best race is good enough to beat any one of these shorter prices if they fire their best shots. But if you're playing vertical exotics and you're looking for a bomb to throw in second or third, your exactas or trifectas, you could do a lot worse.
Yep.
Gino, by the way, to add to Andrew's point about her sitting on her best race, from a Ragozin standpoint, 3 starts back, 12.5, 2 starts back, 11.25. Last start was a career best 10.25. So she's coming off of a career best, and she's coming off of the kind of pattern. That if you look at Ragozin,
you're not going to bounce. You're going to keep progressing.
Yeah. So she's likely to run somewhere between maybe an 8 3/4 and a 9 1/4 here. Is that going to be good enough to win? Probably not. Is it good enough to run third? Absolutely.
And then we can, I guess, group the final 2 together, DZ, because we have Hopeful Growth and Dream Marie. They've actually raced against each other in the last 2. They were both in the Delaware Oaks and then in the Monmouth Oaks. They traded decisions as far as who beat who in 2 races. Hopeful Growth was actually pretty impressive, winning her last start in the Monmouth Oaks. She was close up. She was in tight inside. She just saves all the ground right off of the heels of the leaders and then just waits, angles around. And when she was asked, it was super impressive. It's just same type of thing. How good is she? Can she compete with the top 2? Is she going to be sitting, or wanting to be forwardly placed or not too far out of it in a race where there's a couple other real quality fillies in here? So, I mean, I'm not sure with her. Dream Marie, who was well beaten by Hopeful Growth last time out, I mean, she could maybe pass some tired horses late, but I like other price horses than the 2 to the outside. I don't get real excited about either one of them.
Yeah, so for me, both of these are not going to be on any tickets, even third and tries or anything like that. And the reason being, I think that Monmouth Oaks number is phony. That track that day was really, really slow. If you take a look, I mean, if you make your own spade figures and you run a variant, that Monmouth track had to have, whatever number you use. I'll just put it to you, it was a very slow track. And I think the buyer number is kind of over-exaggerated based on how slow that track was. When you go a mile and a 16th at Monmouth and you're talking 48-2, 113-2, you don't see that real often at Monmouth. And that just points to the fact that that's the way the track was that day. I think it's a phony number. I don't think it was a very good race in terms of class standpoint. And you look at the numbers prior to that, from anywhere between Dream Marie or Hopeful Growth, they're just nowhere good enough. So, these are 2 tosses for me.
Dream Marie is an absolute toss for me. Hopeful Growth, I think, could well be a nice horse. That 90 buyer, if it's legitimate, not a terrible number. If you're playing dime supers or really ridiculous exotics with deep ticket structures and a lot of people chipping in a couple bucks here and there, maybe this is one you throw in third or fourth and see what happens, but can't endorse on the win end for sure.
So there's your field for the Oaks. Let's kind of give a wrap up on the Oaks race in particular, Darin, and then overall Andrew, I think you said you have a ticket you can go through. Darin, you don't have to go leg, but maybe give us a horse or two or how you're going to build this pick 5 ticket on Oaks Friday.
Yeah, so basically what's going to happen is, I like to build tickets around, specific horses. Speech is going to be a fairly big part of that. Although I'm not as confident in her as I am in Vexatious. So, Speech is going to be my A. Gamine I'm not going to have. Swiss Skydiver is going to be close to an A for me. And even She Dares the Devil I'm going to use probably on a couple of tickets as well. But for me, the race does come. The sequence comes down to the La Troyenne. Vexatious is going to be an absolute single for me as an A. If she wins, it's going to give me a lot of coverage in some other spots. It gives me a chance to maybe even go a little bit beyond the 2 favorites in the 8 bells. So for me, I might go 3 or 4 deep to start the 2 favorites. I know I might use Andrew's filly because he made a good case for her in that spot. I'm buying the Edgewood because I do think that race is a lot more wide open than it appears on paper. The Ali Sheba, I'm going to get some depth in there. Silver Dust and Mr. Freeze are going to be my key horses. I'm going to be using Mackenzie very sparingly, by my standards a little bit, title ready a little bit. And then as we talked about, big focus on Vexatious. Oaks, we're gonna need Speech or Swiss Skydiver probably to win there. So that's the crux of my ticket. I'll certainly tweet out. I don't do like some of the other guys where they like, put it out on Twitter and it's like, oh, is this guy really betting it? I'll actually post my ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So you know that I'm actually in for the same investment that I'm telling you. Here's my recommended play.
Darin, I appreciate that, but I got to tell you, if you're out there listening and you're one of your, post your ticket slip or it didn't happen, people, get a life. I'm just saying. There are so many bigger things to worry about in the world than, I want to see the bet slip herpaderp.
For me, it's on record. It's when you're on record. Like when you're having a pod or you guys are talking on record, like when you go before the race and you're on record with who you like, that's the most important to me. I just don't like when the people are telling me they hit things and they never posted it, they never talked about it, they never mentioned it. But hey, if you're talking about a horse for a while, saying go bet this horse, I don't care. And it doesn't matter to me if you bet 0, 2, or 200. It's a good job handicapping. Obviously, the people that bet, the betting is what matters for sure. But I know what you're saying, Andrew. For me, it's just more of like I don't like the after the fact, the pointing out the, hey, look, I had that horse, but I didn't tell anybody or ever mention it to anyone on earth.
Right. It's the Fleet Dreams principle from Let It Ride. You might have told us you liked them, for Christ's sakes. What a great movie Let It Ride is. Now, going back to this pick 5, look, if you followed me on Twitter or in the Pink Sheet or anywhere else that I've been for any length of time, you know that I tend to play pretty economical tickets, and I'm not going to give out a ticket that I myself don't feel comfortable putting in myself. It's one of those things where I'm not going to give out a ridiculously priced ticket just to say that I hit the sequence. Now, the benefit of that is if a sequence comes up a little bit chalky, it doesn't hurt me as much as it hurts bigger players out there. Some people call it a singles hitter strategy. Well, I'm throwing in a couple of prices here to where if, say, 4 chalks come in and then Tempers Rising wins the Kentucky Oaks, I'm still standing to collect a pretty decent amount of money. So my ticket, if you play it caveman style, it's a $48 play. I'll go through with some A's and B's. Race number 8 is the 8 bells. Monday Call and Wisconsin are my A's. Four Graces is my B. Nothing against Four Graces. I just think Monday Call is probably a little bit faster than that one. If Four Graces wins, I'll still have tickets live, but it's just a case where I think if you're picking speed horses there, you sort of have to go one or the other and then have a closer to come pick up the pieces. That's what I have with Wisconsin. So 1 and 5 are A's. The 7 is a B. Race number 9, I've got 2 A's. 3 and 8. Sharing is the 3 horse coming in off of that great second in the Coronation over at Royal Ascot. And I'll also use Walk in Marrakesh, assuming the turf course has a little bit of cut, a little bit of give in the ground. 3 and 8 in race number 9, the grade 2 Edgewood, Adam Copeland's favorite race. Race number 10 is the Ali Sheba, grade 2. And this is an event where I'm going 4 deep in here. I'm using the logicals. McKinsey and By My Standards are sort of defensive uses, but I'm also going to throw in number 3, Owendale, who gets the pace that he figures to need. And I'll throw in Title Ready as well, because this is a horse second off the layoff for Dallas Stewart that seems to be training lights out, and is another that seems to want a very fast pace that it seems likely he's going to get. 2, 3, 6, 7 there. Race number 11, the La Trayenne. This is where Darin and I take different paths. I'm singling Monomoy Girl in here. I just think she's the class of the field. I respect Vexatious, but this is Monomoy Girl's home track. And if she doesn't win, I lose. I imagine many others do as well. And that's why I respect Darin for taking a stand. I just think Monomoy Girl's the better horse, and I want opportunities to spread elsewhere, including in the Grade 1 Kentucky Oaks. Swiss Skydiver is my top selection in there. 8-5 on the morning line. I think we'll get it. Tyler Gaffleone should have some options. Can go on the lead. Doesn't necessarily need to go on the lead. I'm trying to beat Speech. Gamine is a defensive use for me as a B. My other Bs are number 2, Tempers Rising, that 50-1 shot, and number 3, Dona Veloce, who may very well be a freak if she's ready to run off of that 6-month layoff. If you use all of these horses in a caveman ticket, it comes out to $48. If you want to use a tool like DRF Bet's Ticket Maker, you can do that and do A's, B's, and C's and come up with something that fits your budget a little bit more. But that's my ticket. Hopefully we get a price or two home in the right spots to make this pay a little bit.
Awesome stuff, fellas. And like I said, we're talking early. We're recording this Tuesday night because I want to get these episodes out early so that way people have an opportunity to listen to them throughout the week and get their handicapping done. But give us about like a minute each. We'll start with DZ. Give me like a minute on the Derby early on. We know Art Collector's out. Overall thoughts, Tiz the Law. Is there anyone early on that you're looking at as maybe a middle horse or a long shot to throw on some tickets? Where do you stand with Tiz?
Sure. I mean, look, totally respect Tiz. I actually like the post-draw form. I think it works out very well for him. I'm fading Authentic. I don't like him at all. I like him even less with the 18 hole. I think with the 2 speeds to his inside, I don't think he's a stalker. I think he wants the lead. And I think that's going to make things a little difficult on him. Honor AP, I'm okay on, but, not totally convinced that he necessarily has to be second. If you're looking for middle price horses that I'm going to be using, I will be using New York Traffic. I think he was a good second in the Haskell. I think he's developing nicely. I respect Paco Lopez as a rider here. We'll need to work out a trip in the outside post there from the 15 with all that speed to his outside. Maybe a little bit concerning, but I think he has a chance to hit the ticket at a price. I know 1,000 Words is pretty popular. The Bob Baffert lovers, I'm okay on him. Not totally sold, but not totally against. The other horse that I know that I'm going to be using at a price is going to be the 2 Max Player, who, has been a third behind Tiz the Law the last 2 starts. And basically, he's run into a monster the last 2. And, I forgive that. He's racing against him again. He doesn't have to beat him, but, I certainly think he could run third to him again. So, I'm going to need a long shot like that to get on the ticket. But, yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine that Tiz the Law has any reason to regress here, unless you think he's just not the freak that he appears to be, and he might actually regress off of lifetime best, numbers. I haven't looked at the Ragozin sheets yet, so I don't know what he got in the Travers, but from the buyer standpoint, I'm sure it was a pretty darn big number.
I have 3 prevailing theories going into the Kentucky Derby. Theory number 1, Tiz the Law should not lose. Mm-hmm. I just can't I can't complicate this. I just can't do it. Theory number 2, Authentic and Max Player will be underlays, and not because of anything they've done on the racetrack or haven't done, whatever. I think the My Racehorse people, God bless them. I think that's a fantastic venture if you're into that sort of thing. I think every single one of those owners is going to be firing at the windows, and I think we may very well get the My Boy Jack effect with so much money coming in, not necessarily having to do with the form.
Hey, Andrew, real quick, for Max Player, what would constitute an underlay for you?
Lower than his morning line.
Oh, anything lower than 31. Okay.
Anything lower than that. I have never been high on that horse. I think he's a nice horse. I think he's punching above his weight class here.
Yeah, now, 20 seems probably more for me. Like, I think over 20 I'm okay with, because for me, most of it is just, and you can get your third point just for a second, is just, I just, sort of like what you're saying, Andrew, I just don't love anyone in here. So you could, if you have a strong case to like a longer price to hit the ticket somewhere, I'm okay with your case, because I have maybe one or two strong opinions on horses that I think are going to run well, but I don't have a strong opinion really against Tis the Law. There's nobody, I would have loved to see Art Collector in the race, because now I think one of the horses that I might like is going to be even shorter. So I don't love the race from a betting standpoint at all. And I completely agree with a lot of what you had said. So you got your one, you got your two. What is your third point, Andrew?
I appreciate the dramatic pause to build suspense, because this one's a doozy. Point number 3, Enforceable hits the board. Enforceable was my Belmont horse back in January or February. There is an alternate universe where Enforceable wins the Belmont in June and pays $32.40 after running a non-threatening 6th or 7th in the Kentucky Derby on the first Saturday in May. The one thing I will say about Enforceable that we can't say for 2/3 of this field, the distance will not beat him. This is a horse that is a grinder. There is no turn of foot here. This is a horse that will be grinding away in the stretch, may very well be 13th or 14th going into the turn, but that's when a lot of horses are going to be stopping. Enforceable on his best day, I don't think can beat Tis the Law. But in order for me to have a profitable Kentucky Derby, I don't think he has to. My play may very well be trifectas: Tis the Law, all Enforceable, and Tis the Law, Enforceable, all. If Tis the Law wins, Enforceable hits the board, and we get another price in second or third, I'll be dancing pretty hard up here in Northern California.
Now, Andrew, one question though: if you like this horse that much, to the point where you think you liked him back in January, you're going to let a scenario occur where this horse, if he gets his nose on the wire first, you're not going to collect?
Well, there's going to be some save or win and double play too.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
The tries are the main play there.
Okay,
sure.
My thinking is Tis the Law should not lose. As much as I liked Enforceable way, way, way back, you can make the argument that he certainly hasn't progressed as much as Tis the Law has. Tis the Law is just a better horse. There's going to be some save or win money on that horse. I know Ken Rudolph, our friend Ken Rudolph, really likes that horse. I have been high on him, as I've mentioned, for a pretty long time, and I was really hoping we'd get a chance to see him go 1.5 miles. Who knows, maybe after this they'll run him in the marathon on Breeders' Cup week and we'll get a chance to see what he can do there. But going 1.25 miles is not going to hurt this horse. 30-1 on the morning line. I think we'll get that price. And again, I'm not necessarily saying he'll win, but if you're looking for a horse to throw in second or third at a price, I think that's the one.
Gino, I'll leave with this. So, like you, I'm having a hard time finding anything that I love, but my strongest opinion truly in this race is I do not like Authentic at all. I
think I completely agree with you.
Yeah, Into Mischief at 1.25 miles. I did not like his Haskell. I thought he got the better of the fact that Dr. Post had a terrible trip that day. And on top of which, where he's going to be early in this race and where Tis the Law is going to be, when Tis the Law makes his move, I think he's going to completely chew up Authentic's heart and spit it out. And this horse is going to stop in the stretch entirely. I think he's an absolute stone-cold sucker play. And if he's anywhere in the top 4, I will not be cashing a single ticket. That's how strongly I feel that this horse is just a complete fraud in this spot.
Awesome stuff, fellas. I appreciate it when the three of us get together. It doesn't matter if it's wrestling, racing, whatever it is. We are going to go on, and I think the people will enjoy this because we're coming up on an hour 40 minutes for the late pick 5 for Churchill on Friday, and a little Derby thought. So you're not going to find analysis like this breaking down each race with different opinions really anywhere else. DZ, AC, good luck this weekend. You make sure to follow along with the both of them because you'll get some thoughts for theirs from Saturday stuff that we didn't get really the chance to talk too much about in here. We'll be talking some wrestling again next week when we recap SummerSlam 2001. Darin and then Andrew, just give the folks out there, where can we follow you along on social media?
Sure. So I'm on Twitter and at the Track 7. I'll certainly be tweeting out thoughts about the Oaks and the Derby coming up for this week. And then I just did my first fantasy football draft. You would have never known it, but I did the entire draft while talking to you, fine gentlemen.
Wow, impressive.
So we are multitasking. So we'll be doing a lot of football stuff as well. So it's going to be a fun fall. We got a lot of cool stuff to look forward to all the way through Derby, Preakness, Breeders' Cup, football. Lots of good stuff coming up. So certainly follow us there at the Track 7.
I, too, am a defending fantasy football champion. The idiots in my league let me draft Pat Mahomes and Saquon Barkley in the same draft 2 years ago. It's a keeper league, and they are going to be paying for that for the next 15 years. Twitter is at Andrew Champagne. Lots going on, not just in Kentucky, but also at Saratoga. It's closing week there, and there are a lot of really good races still left to be run. We've got the Woodward. We've got a really cool New York Bred Showcase Day coming up on Friday. And, of course, the 2-year-old races, the Spinaway and the Hopeful, both grade ones. I am embroiled in a pitched battle with a cartoon character in the pink sheet. We are both tied with 99 wins heading into day 35 on Wednesday. I had to do some quick math in my head. I think I got that right. But it's going to be pretty fun seeing if I can win my 5th pink sheet championship, one for the thumb, as they say. But I'll have some Churchill stuff as well, obviously. Really looking forward to this weekend, not the least of which because I'm off on Friday and Monday's a holiday. So it's a 4-day weekend where I can just concentrate on the horses. That's going to be a lot of fun. Champagne and JD will be back this week. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus for a variety of reasons. Was a really busy month for me at work. My co-host and producer, JD Fox, unfortunately hadn't been feeling all that well as well, but thankfully he's back on the mend. He's doing better. So we'll be back this week over on YouTube. Go give us a subscribe there. We've got a whole bunch of really cool guests that we've had in the past. So take a look at some of our past shows for some of the interviews that we've been able to do. But lots going on, as Darin mentioned, and it's going to be the case for the rest of the year as, hopefully speaking, horse racing's in a good shape to capitalize heading into the Breeders' Cup.
Loads of information for you folks for the Friday Pick 5 and even some thoughts on Saturday's Derby. Darin Zoccali, Andrew Champagne, two of the best fellas around that you'll find. Thanks again, folks, and don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with much, much more on That's What G Said. One of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast is Cindy Carava, full-service realtor, and I am here over in Glendora at Coldwell Banker with Cindy Carava. Cindy, how was 2019 for you? Tell us a little bit about what kind of stuff you were working on.
Hi, Gino. Thanks for having me. 2019 was just really great. I had a great year selling homes all the way from Altadena, Arcadia, Monrovia, out to Upland and Ontario just recently. The market has been really good. We're looking forward to 2020 with an increase in home prices about 5.8% this year, opposed to last year where it was a little softer. We saw more like homes averaging about 3.5% in increase in value. It's also looking great for buyers. The interest rates right now are going to be staying under 4%. So if you've been on the fence about thinking about buying a home, now is the time to do so with interest rates still staying low.
And you offer more services than just the buying, selling, and leasing homes. Tell us about some of the other services that you offer and what a full-service realtor really is.
So you're right, Gino. Besides me being a full-service realtor of finding properties for my clients to buy or selling their homes or finding rentals for them, I also have a plethora of resources like handyman, contractors, electricians, plumbers. I even, if you're thinking about getting a home loan, I actually work with 2 great lenders that I can recommend to anybody.
And you're all over the internet, social media, websites. Let us know some of the places where we can find you. I know I've seen some reviews on Yelp and on Zillow. Everyone always has positive things to say. Everybody hears me raving about you all the time. But where can everyone else find out information about you or contact?
Thank you, Gino. Yeah, I am on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And you can contact me on my website, which is www.cindycarava.com, or my email, which is cindyc.realtor@gmail.com, or feel free to call or text me on my cell phone, which is 626-394-6400.
Cindy is awesome. She's one of the kindest and most genuine people I've ever met. I promise you, you will enjoy every minute you interact with her. So thank you very much, Cindy. Appreciate all of your support from That's What G Said podcast.
Thank you, Gino. Have a great day, everyone.
Big thank you to DZ and AC for helping us out there talking that late pick 5. Let's kind of just go over some of my selections real quick for the sequence because I didn't really get too. I mean, I got too specific, but let's just go real quick recap them. So in the 8th race, I am 5-7. Wisconsin, Four Graces as my top 2. I think Four Graces is probably the one to beat, but with Monday Call, I'll be using Monday Call in some, so I'm 5-7, 7-5-1-2-4 in race number 8. In race number 9, I like Hendy Woods. I'm going to make Hendy Woods my top selection. Hendy Woods on top of Sharing. So 2-3 for me and everything. With the 4, Lucky Betty as my big price play. The turf debut. She's beat Older. I like this filly. I think she has some ability. The 8, Walk in Marrakesh. It's hard to leave her out because she's going to be right there. It just, does she want to win? We'll start to find out in the next few races. Maybe she's one that just likes to settle for minor rewards. In good spirits from the inside. You know you're going to get some speed out of this one. So those are 2, 3, 4, 8, 1, 2, 3 on that top tier. In race number 10, I'm going to the 5 Mr. Freeze as my top selection. By my standards, will be on all of my exotics. The 3 Owendale will be in a lot of them. I'll throw in the 1 Silver Dust in a couple. I know Andrew is high on Title Ready, so I'm going to actually include him in a few exotics also. But no McKinsey for me, and it'll be 5, 6 as the top tier on a lot of exotics, and then 5, 6, 3, 1, then include Title Ready also after the sales job from Andrew. And then we get to race number 11, the La Troyenne. For me, I put I put Monomoy Girl on top. Probably a spot where I single 1 ticket, and then I'll have another ticket where I'm using all combinations of 2, 4, 5, 6, and 8. But really 2, 4, 6, and 8. I do think the 4 has an opportunity to get in the mix there. And so Monomoy on 1 ticket, another ticket where we spread out a little bit. And then for me in the Oaks, it's 4-1-7. It's Speech, Swiss Skydiver, She's the Daredevil, Donna Veloce as a wild card. The 3 I use in some spots. Temper's Rising, I flop underneath in a couple spots. And Gamine, she's awesome. She's so good. But we have to pick and choose some spots where we're not going to just be using the favorite. We can't use the heavy favorite in all of these races and expect the pick 5 to pay anything. We got to have reasons why. And I have plenty that we talked about against Gamine. This is a tough spot for her. She's going to have to prove she can deal with a lot of heat. She's going to have to go farther than she has. Can she raid if she doesn't break alertly and right on top? Some question marks with Gamine. Give me Swiss Skydiver, give me Speech, give me She's the Daredevil on some, 4-1-7 as the top tier, 3 and 2 as maybe others to include in a few. In the 13th race, didn't get a chance to talk about that one at all. I'm going to start with the 3 Real News, who adds the blinkers. I loved him on May the 29th. He broke well. He was sitting 4th on the inside, and then he lost his footing. He was in tight, and he had to take up. He lost all momentum. He lost a few lengths, and that was that. Last out, he broke well again. He tried to sit in a similar spot inside. Immediately he's in tight. Nowhere to go. Lost ground. Tough trip. He needs to get a little lucky. He's had brutal trips in his last few, and it doesn't make sense because he's got a nice running style where he's pretty versatile. He puts himself into it. He just has been in spots where he's been backed up right into. The 5 Extravagant Kid drew the rail last time out, so he had to come from way out of it. He had to make that inside to outside move, which is not easy for a horse with his running style who wants to sit off a bit. He has more speed than he was able to show last time out. You have Gaffleone, who's a lot more aggressive than Joel is. Expect Extravagant Kid to run a big one. The 4 Bound for Nowhere. He was battling on the lead inside of Tiger Blood. He put away the other speed last time out. Just couldn't hold off the closers. Leinster, Totally Boss. Should be fit. Put a couple races together now, but he still really hasn't raced in July. We're talking about September now. The 2 Well Abled is really, really quick. He's hard to completely dismiss because if anybody gets a clear advantage, it's probably him. I just don't know if he's going to be able to get an advantage in a race like this. A clear one. A couple other horses I just wanted to mention that I might throw on some crazy tickets where that I'm really deep here. The 8 Just Might. He tries really hard. He's not that far behind a lot of this group. And in these turf sprints, it's all about who ends up getting the right trip. He's going to get the right trip one of these days and win a race like this at a big price. And as long as he keeps running well enough against this group to prove, like groups like this, to prove that he's not overmatched. He was 40-1 last time out, and he got tired late, but he had some trouble, and he's not a horse that deserves to be 30 or 40-1. He's probably more like a 12, 15-1 shot. Then what do we do with Tiger Blood? What I like about Tiger Blood is he proved last time out that he can pass some horses. He's always been a really quick speed type, but now he showed us, okay, I can pass some horses if need be. But he's hooked, he's parked wide. They're going to have to use a lot of that speed. Again, he's in good hands with someone like Maker. So a really nice Friday card, as you would imagine, at Churchill Downs. And we're going to get through so what I'm going to do for Saturday now is I'm going to have 4 different guests on for Saturday going through different parts of the card. So I'm going to have someone joining me to talk races 1, 2, 3, and then they'll give their opinion on the Derby. I'm going to have someone joining me to talk races 4, 5, 6, 7, and then they'll give their opinion on the Derby. Someone's going to be joining us to talk races 8, 9, 10, and then their opinion on the Derby, and then races 11, 12, 13, and also the Derby. So you're going to get tons of different thoughts on the full Saturday card. I wanted to make these episodes really horse racing focused for a couple of the big days, because honestly, starting next week, we're always going to have horse racing on the show. We're always going to be giving out horses for the weekend and talking about the news and breaking down the big days. But football's going to be in the mix. We're going to have football starting. So we're going to have a show now where we'll be covering racing, football, basketball, baseball. It's going to change very, very quickly. And in the NFL, if you're watching Hard Knocks on HBO, we had episode 3 last week and then episode 4 just on Tuesday night. I'm going to go through those 2. Episode 3, we saw Chargers coach Phil McGowan going through film. He loves to drop some F-bombs, and he even had a joke on social media this week about how he has to donate to a fund because everybody was giving him a hard time for how much he cusses on the show. But he doesn't care who you are. This is what we've seen about the Chargers coaches. They don't care who you are. If you don't block, you're not going to play. Big name players, running backs, tight ends, whoever you are, you block. If you don't block, you're not playing. We see the footballs being prepared. They're being leathered up, and all the preparation for training camp. Sean McVay, he is so pumped. He's so excitable. He's telling stories. He's excited for things to be moving forward. We get the first practices with pads. And Coach Lynn has a Zoom call to prepare everyone. He says, just remember, these guys are on your team. We want you to hit, but we don't want anybody to take any cheap shots here. That Chargers coach, Phil, getting on everybody for not blocking. They're watching film from camp. They're finding lots of mistakes. Coach Lynn is finding lots of mistakes. And a lot of the early part of the episode is about blocking. And he talks about Keenan Allen, the wide receiver. And they love him because he blocks. And he's one of the team leaders. The players look up to him. He talks some trash on the field. He backs it up. And now he's got this in-team rivalry with Chris Harris, who used to play for the Broncos. And they went at each other for years. And now Harris plays for the Chargers. And so they go against each other in practice. It makes the both of them better. And they've got this fun little history. And they laugh about former games and a holding call that went against Keenan a few years back. Keenan makes him look goofy. He kind of falls backwards and trips over in practice. And so Harris is talking about his new surroundings. He's talking to his wife about the new team. They are on a video call with their kids who are back in Colorado. He has to leave his kids for a while they figure out the new arrangement, moving, getting a new place, coming on out here, everything. They're staying with the grandparents back in Colorado. We see quarterback Jared Goff, QB1, with his girlfriend touring SoFi Stadium. This huge, massive circular video board. This stadium looks nice. It is big. Can't wait to get a look at this thing on the TV. We see the rookie linebacker Clay Johnston, who they've taken a focus in a lot. He's such a dork, but he's a nice guy. He loves football. He works hard. His dad was a coach. His dad is one of the best friends of Brett Favre. He was the best man in Brett Favre's wedding. And we see Clay chatting on a Zoom call with his dad. His dad's making fun of his hair, and his dad's making fun of his goatee. And then Brett Favre jumps on the Zoom call, and Clay calls him Papa Favre. They give Clay advice. He knows he's making mistakes, but he wants it. And that's one thing that Clay has, and you can see it that he has more than a lot of other people. He loves the game. He cares. Quarterback Tyrod Taylor tweaking some of the plays. He talks about, he's been around. He's seen a lot of different things. He was the backup in the Super Bowl for the Ravens. He took a Buffalo team that hadn't won in a long time and won with them. Ended a playoff drought. He then went over to Cleveland, and he was in a tough spot because they draft Baker Mayfield, and he ends up getting hurt. And so he's not the guy. Tyrod's not the guy anymore, and Baker has that really good rookie year. Then he comes to the Chargers, and they're in a similar situation. They draft Justin Herbert. So now he's got to be a leader of this team, but he knows that there's someone, he's got to kind of look over his back because he knows there's someone behind him. He seems like a really good guy, though. This seems like he's got a great head on his shoulders, very even-keeled, and he comes off very well like a really nice leader. One thing I like, too, is that the Chargers look like they have some really good leaders on their team. Another one is Melvin Ingram. He was waiting on contract renegotiations, and he's still showing up to practice every day, helping the team. He's not taking snaps and reps. He doesn't want to get hit or anything like that. He's been waiting for his deal to get done, but he's there. He's helping players. He's teaching. And we get to see some of his personal life. He loves music. He loves to rap. And we see him in the studio working on songs. We look at all the Rams getting their temperature check on the way into camp. At this point, 0 positive tests in either camp. We get a look at Juju Hughes, who's rocking the toothpick all the time. It's his thing. He started using a toothpick to stop biting his nails, which is something I should do. And now he wears it. He has the toothpick in all the time. He walks around with it on the field, everywhere he goes. It's dangerous. Somebody trips you and you fall with the toothpick in your mouth. That's dangerous. But he's funny. He was there's some, what's great is when we see these, we get to see some of the personalities here. And then Melvin Ingram, he gets a guaranteed deal for 2020, and we see him on the field and getting involved, and he is so good. So good out there. So tough to stop. Chris Harris has a fun, nice moment where his family has now moved out with him. Kids haven't been with him for a month. His wife had to go back and forth. Now they're out there, and he can feel a little more comfortable, like it's actually home with the family. The Rams have a dress rehearsal at SoFi Stadium for the first time. The guys are pumped. They're playing offense, defense. Clay Johnston and Juju Hughes getting some reps in, trying to survive the cuts. They are 3 weeks out from the first game. That is Hard Knocks Episode 3. We're going to get into Hard Knocks Episode 4 in just a second. Oh, don't forget about our friends over at Cera Candle Company, CERAcandles.com. All natural soy wax, free from all those toxins found in paraffin wax. A bunch of the other leading brands use that. So are you someone who burns a lot of candles? Does your wife, your husband, your friend, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, anyone that you know out there, turn them on to Cera Candle Company. We'll give you a little bonus. If you use the promo code GINO, you get 10% off of your purchase. This is a small business that has a goal to create a candle, healthy, natural, clean burning, high quality, that everyone can enjoy. They didn't want them to be $100 candles. They wanted them to be very affordable. You have 25 different scents you can choose from, 3 different sizes, best ingredients, quality packaging, longer burning. Because of that all-natural soy wax, they actually will burn up to 50% longer than the traditional paraffin wax used in other candles. They give you instructions on how to clean your candle, details on how to keep your candle burning perfectly, and the long burn. Remember, you're burning a flame in your house. You want to be careful. You want to trim your wick a little bit. You want to make sure it's clean in there. You want to put it out the right way with putting the Cera Candle top right on it. This is a perfect gift for someone. Promo code GINO gets you 10% off your purchase. Cera Candle Company. It's CERAcandles.com. CERAcandles.com. Promo code GINO. So the most recent episode of NFL Hard Knocks was a different one because it was a lot focused on the things that have been going on in the world in the last week or so, the things that we really can't ignore. And Sean McVay mentions this very early on in the episode, but one of the first things we see is Sean McVay and another one of the Rams coaches looking at the video of what happened to Jacob Blake, who had been shot 7 times in the last week. Sean McVay is visually distraught, and one of the assistant coaches are talking about this, and they're discussing how their team should protest. Should it be canceling practice? The team is all reeling. And what Anthony Lynn talks about is how can they get a team ready with the world on fire? How can he keep his team even with stuff like this happening in the world? Something that both coaches, Sean McVay and Anthony Lynn, wonder. We see Coach Phil Mack practicing for his broadcasting career early on. And then what's a real bummer is that Mike Williams, the big target wide receiver who can go up and make jump catches with the best of them, he gets hurt diving on a pass play. He looks in major pain, shoulder sprain. He's going to be out a few weeks. It's a big blow for them. Rookie quarterback Herbert is struggling a little bit. New scheme, new playbook. Everything's very quick. But it's good for him, and the coaches like it. It's growth when you struggle, because it's all about how you improve and how you bounce back. For the Rams, rookie wide receiver Van Jefferson getting great reviews. They are raving about him. He had a great scrimmage. They love the routes that he's been running, and he's been going up against Jalen Ramsey in practice. Jared Goff is happy with how the defense looks. Remember, this Rams defense really needs to be improved. They were a sieve last year. You could just do whatever you wanted against that Rams D. Now we're getting to the point of Hard Knocks where we have to make the cuts. So first it's rookie backup quarterback Josh Love, then rookie linebacker Brian London. They keep teasing what they're going to do with Clay Johnston, who's coming off his ACL surgery. He's trying desperately to make the team. Fun little segment with Anthony Lynn working with the running backs on jump drills, trying to get into the goal line or get that yard that they need to go up and over. And then the rookie, Brandon Fahuko, whose pops was a big part of Hawaii doing all sorts of ceremonies and cultural performances. Braden was also a part of that with his family in some of those performances when he was a kid. And this guy has a great head on his shoulders. He just seems really smart. He's very well liked. He does one of his cultural dances to help break the team down, and the guys get real pumped. They get real into it. We see his conversation with his family on Zoom. They are very proud of him. They are in tears. So happy for his success. And then quarterback Justin Herbert, he bounces back the next day looking much better, much more comfortable after a bad day. And that's when the tone changes a little bit, because the news of the boycotts from the NBA, the Blake shooting, they all spread. The coaches are devastated. The players and teams around the league, they show support in different ways. Some protests, some cancel scrimmages, some cancel practices. Anthony Lynn, he's not as high on canceling things just to practice, because unless there's something more behind it. He wants it to have a little more meaning, but he's going to stand by his players no matter what. And in the end, they end up canceling their scrimmage. They decide not to scrimmage. There's bigger things in the world to worry about that day. They'll make it up next week. This is a heavy episode, real-world stuff that's just hard to ignore. Sean McVay talks about the issues that used to never be discussed in sports. Race, religion, and politics. Because we have to talk about them now. We can't. They intersect. The Rams discuss what they should do. And it's uncomfortable discussions for everybody. But some very insightful conversations, too. And as the Rams get ready for another scrimmage at SoFi, we see Anthony Lynn, who gives an open floor to the team to speak their minds, and the Charger coaches and players have some passionate words, and then we see at the end they decide not to scrimmage. So, not as much football on episode 4 of Hard Knocks, because it was just a week where a different week, a sad week, but hopefully a week that we look back on and see that there was some change that came out of it. Folks, thanks for tuning in to this episode of That's What G Said. Big thank you to Andrew Champagne and Darin Zoccali for joining me. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget, rate, review, download, subscribe, everywhere you get your podcast. Share it around with all your friends. If anyone's asking for some help with the Kentucky Oaks, and don't forget about the Derby, we will have a big Kentucky Derby preview going through all those races with a bunch of different guests throughout the day. Enjoy the week. Good luck on Friday, and I'll be back again in the next day and a half or so with a big episode, your Kentucky Derby Saturday preview on That's What G Said.